Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Here comes. In there! And that does it! History in the desert! The Texas Rangers, for the first time ever, are World Series champs. And the celebration begins third base side of the mound, the dog pile, as they jump up and down out of the dugout, out from the bullpen in right field. The Rangers celebrate. The Texas Rangers are World Series champs.
63 years is a long time to wait, but the Texas Rangers are World Series champions. It's my distinct pleasure to present the Commissioner's Trophy to Ray Davis, Neil Liebman, and Chris Young.
Steve Reed, an excellent free throw shooter, will have the honors shooting the technical. Looky here. Bobby Knight just threw his chair across the free throw lane. And I think unbelievable. He picked up another tee.
We only got two people that are going to tell you I'm not going to be here. One is our SID and the other is me. Who the hell told you I wasn't going to be here? I'd like to know. Do you have any idea who it was?
Yeah, I do.
Who?
I'll put him out there in line.
They were from Indiana, right?
No, they're not.
No, weren't from Indiana, and you didn't get it from anybody from Indiana, did you? No, I'll handle this the way I want to handle it now that I'm here. You it up to begin with. Now just sit there or leave. I don't give a what you do. Now, back to the game.
Welcome in. Good morning on a Thursday to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me.
Hello.
And we are live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm currently logging in so that we'll be live on YouTube.
Oh, I'm live on YouTube
and
right
Twitter
now.
as well. Yeah.
There's no issue there.
Andrew's got you covered.
I put the comb over today.
Yeah,
Yeah, nice little comb over.
Is that just feeling the comb over today?
I was feeling the brush this morning. You know, normally I'm just like, hey, I'm gonna grab a hat, like make it easy on myself. I'm like, nah, I'll dice it up a little bit, change the look up. I wore a newish long sleeve that I got from your local store. They don't sponsor with our show, so they don't get a shout out. And until they do, you'll never know where I got this from.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm like all classed up for high school. Like this seems like I feel very high school today.
Yeah, you're like taking class picture.
Yeah.
Just getting
not really class picture, like just more like, I feel like this is what a high schooler would wear.
Okay. There we go. We got Andrew dressed up as we're a couple days after Halloween. You'd have to dress up today.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of feeling the education vibes today because we all know Bob Knight was a huge supporter of student athletes and the education off the court. We know Bob was uber successful when it came to coaching, but the off the court stuff kind of gets like lost in the mix. But if you really think about it, like he was one of those coaches that always had a top tier graduation rate for his teams.
Yeah, so it's you mentioned off court stuff. The positive off the court stuff always gets lost, right? Like the negative off the court stuff we remember, and I mean rightfully so. Like Bob Knight's actually like a really unique person for me because he embodies, I think, what a lot of our lives are closer to than maybe we realize. Where I think complicated is a good word for his legacy because there was some stuff that he did that he definitely should not have done, right? Like that's
like what?
A lot of the hitting of people.
Oh, you can't do that?
And it goes back to like the 70s. It wasn't like he just became a crotchety old man. Like he's kind of always been like this. But I also
a different time, a different world.
Yeah, but he kept doing it into like the 2010s.
Yeah, unfortunately, it what worked for him, right?
And it was, and he's a complicated guy because obviously he has this part of his personality that he had a really hard time controlling, but he also has this part of his personality where he obviously deeply cared about his players, and
the players love and adore him.
Yes, yes, and he was obviously very good at what he did in terms of coaching basketball. Stylistically, it's not something I would have probably wanted to play for, but it obviously worked for a lot of people. And I do think he was, I think his demeanor overshadowed a lot of the positive things about his life and what he cared about and the people he cared about. Like I actually think he's a very similar figure to Bo Pelini. Like Bo,
I wrote that down.
Like he's obviously he was way more successful than Bo Pelini, right? But Bo Pelini at Nebraska at least was pretty darn successful, especially considering the rest of the last 20 years in Nebraska football history. But a lot of, and ultimately for both people, it was their demeanor that got them fired from the place
and that's why I made the correlation.
Yeah, and it's disappointing because I know for a fact that from people that know him know him well, that Bo Pelini is a very caring person, and like
his players love him.
Yeah, and his players love him, and he is. I don't know him personally, but that he is a genuinely good guy, and that he just has this part of his personality that for some reason or another he's never been able to get his arms around.
Really, all it is he's different. He's not like your buttoned up head coach. He was different. It's the same thing with Bob Knight. Now, Bob Knight was extremely different.
Yeah, and it crossed a line into other things.
But if you think about it, he was one of the most respected individuals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Across the board in basketball. Absolutely. And I'm not just saying college basketball. I'm saying basketball. Yes, he had his antics. Yes, he may have potentially choked out one of his own players. Yes, he threw a chair across the floor, which is all you remember. That's all you remember seeing.
Yeah, you remember the bad stuff.
Do you remember a week and a half ago, you asked me, like, who's a coach I have an affinity for? And I said Bob Knight.
Like a random coach.
You're like, why? And I'm like, because I love watching his highlights. I love watching him throw a chair across the floor.
Yeah.
I love watching how spirited he was on the bench. And I loved seeing his team's success. Like, all in all, that's why I loved Bob Knight, because I didn't get to watch Bob Knight.
Right.
Like, he was so before my time that I only got to see the craziness after the fact. Just the aftermath of it all.
Yeah.
But if you hear anything from college coaches, like we'll throw Coach K in there, who played and who played for Bob Knight and Bob Knight was his mentor.
Yeah.
You have like Bill Self, who would say good things about him. Steve Kerr said something really nice about him too when Steve Kerr was playing with the Bulls. Like there's so many people out there that even though like Bob Knight was this a little over-the-top individual, could come off a little bit scary, he was so respected. So respected.
Yeah.
Like if he pulled you aside, you know you're getting 6 F-bombs in that 3-sentence liner that he gave you. But you also know that you're going to take that away because of the prowess of that he kind of built on his own. Like the house that Bob Knight built was so big and so large and so luxurious. Like he was 902 and 371. Like that was his overall record. He had 902 wins. Like this dude didn't lose often.
No.
He was the last guy to have an undefeated team in college basketball. We've seen teams get close.
But
like nowadays,
go the entire way, including win a national championship. Like
1976 was the last time that a team went undefeated. Well, it was the 75 season, but 76 was the year that a team went undefeated and won the national title. Like Bob Knight won games. He got respect for winning games. Going back to your point that you just made, Bo Pelini won games. He got respect for winning games. But what they gained by winning games, they lost in their personality.
Yeah.
And that's what drove a ton of people away.
Yeah, which I understand the people that it drove away, and I also understand the people that respect him immensely. Honestly, the Bob Knight thing is, like I said, he's one of the most interesting characters, and I don't say that as a pejorative, just like as a personality throughout at least modern sports history because of that dynamic, right? Because of the fact that, you know, he almost seemed like he was two very different people depending on what kind of mood he was in. And maybe he was, right? Like it was but you mentioned the winning. The thing I saw yesterday that shocked me was I knew he had won 3 national titles. Obviously, we know about the undefeated team in '76, which we're going on 50 years now since somebody's done that. Like
Carry the 2.
almost. We're getting there. We're almost there. A few more years. We'll be at 50.
Square root. Yeah.
And the thing that shocked me that I read yesterday was 3 national titles, undefeated season, 900 wins, 1 NBA All-Star. That's the.
Do you remember what he did in the Olympics when he coached the Olympic team?
Yeah, that was with I think Jordan in '84. I think he was.
Do you remember who he said? Yeah, my guy is starting over you. You remember who he said that to?
No.
Charles Barkley.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
John Stockton.
Yeah.
Like he kicked off NBA All-Stars on that team to have his guys that no one even knew that just won him a national title, right? Play in that spot.
He the only NBA All-Star that ever played for him was Isaiah Thomas, which to win at that level, that consistently, and only have one like truly high-level player, had a bunch of guys that went on to play in the NBA, right? But look at North Carolina. All-stars on top of all-stars on top of all-stars. Duke, all-stars on top of, although less so than like a Carolina or Kansas, because a lot of Duke guys kind of flame out historically before the last like one and done stretch here. A lot of Duke guys flamed out in the NBA. But to look at all that success and have one NBA All-Star, first of all, I was stunned by that. And secondly, it goes to show you the level of teacher and coach he was. Like he was elite at the teaching of the game of basketball. There were a lot of things he didn't do as well. Press conferences was one of them, but
hey, I thought those were great. If you weren't in the room, you think those are great.
Yeah, if you're in the room,
you're sweating a little bit before you ask your question.
Yeah, if you're not in the room and you're watching it like 20 years later, like yeah, they're terrific. But
I'd like to refer to this whole thing from start to finish as a real Mickey Mouse operation. But that'd be an insult to Mickey Mouse.
And he obviously had his like quips and anecdotes like that'll probably live forever. The one that rings most true to me now is he's at I think he was being honored in Indiana. I think it was before he got fired, and basically said, when all this is said and done, I hope you bury me upside down so my critics can kiss my ass. That one went around a lot yesterday.
Think they follow through?
I probably not, if I had to guess. But he was obviously one of the defining figures of basketball, I think, in history. I think you'd have a hard time telling the story of basketball without Bob Knight. And maybe that's the biggest compliment you can pay him. I will say, and I tweeted this out last night, Bob Knight is the owner, in my opinion, of the biggest flex in like history, at least sports history. In 1984, between the Olympics, when he was coaching that Olympic team and Michael Jordan and all those guys you were talking about, and the NBA draft, he was telling anybody who would listen that he believed Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player he had ever seen. Before Michael Jordan had played a single NBA game. And these GMs were like, yeah, we get that he's really good, but we need a center. That's why Sam Bowie got taken number 2. Hakeem Olajuwon, like, I don't have an argument with that pick. Like, Hakeem's great, and they wanted a center.
Who's that?
He's a little basketball player, played in Houston for a little while.
Just a little guy?
Yeah. Well,
did he win like back-to-back MVPs?
6'9", 6'10", I think. So a little undersized for a center at the time. But and so he's telling these GMs that he's going around. He said, hey, you need to draft Michael Jordan. You need to draft Michael Jordan. And they're like, Bob, we need a center. And he's like, fine, play Jordan at center. Like his conviction that Michael Jordan was that dude was unwavering. And it probably is the take that's aged the best of any take of all time. So I always will respect him for that. And it kind of just goes to show you his like basketball IQ. Like listen, a lot of people thought Michael Jordan was going to be good, but at that point, he had already had a reputation as being like, he didn't have to say something like that. He wasn't a commentator, talking head person at that point. He was a basketball coach. This dude didn't play for him at Indiana. He was just like, no, that's the best basketball player I've ever seen.
And you know what? That's just his eye for spotting talent.
Yeah.
And that goes back to your point of having one NBA All-Star on his team. Like he didn't need a team of the most talented to win a national title.
Mhm.
He just needed the right guys, the right fit. Who do we talk about having the right guys and the right fit with all the time?
Little guy we like to call Coach Matt Rule.
That
down
is
in Lincoln.
correct. Sometimes it's okay to not have the top 5 stars, whatever. And obviously there weren't like star rankings way back when.
Right.
But people knew who the best were at that time.
Yeah.
Where they were going, who they were playing with and for. But you don't always need that. All you need is the right program, the right chemistry, the right bodies in the room in order to reach a certain goal. And then a lot of that also falls on the coach in order to lead them to get to that point. Bob Knight will go down as like a great coach, one of the greatest of all time. There are some coaches, though, out there that are just pawns on a chessboard. Like they're in different spots. Like if we really want to go down a list of, like, if you look in the NBA, there are teams that you could probably point to right now where you're like, you're more of like a pawn. You're not like the coach. Like, in Milwaukee, like Giannis runs that organization.
There's certain situations where the coach has dramatically less power than others. Yeah.
Right. Where LeBron goes, you probably don't have the greatest of power.
Yeah. But then
you've
got
a lot of guys lose their jobs.
A Popovich or a Kerr who actually run those organizations,
or Spoelstra in Miami.
Yeah,
like
Spoelstra's a great example.
You have really good coaches that are going to go down as great coaches, and then you have other ones that are just pawns.
Yeah, they're
like
kind
Bob
of
Knight
placeholders.
Will always sit in the greatest of coaches.
Yeah, he
always will sit there with Coach K, with Coach Calipari. With a ton of
Roy Williams,
modern day coaches,
Bill Self, those types of guys.
They will fall into the Bob Knight category.
The thing that actually reminded me the most, though, you mentioned Matt Rule. The thing that I think reminds me the most between Bob Knight and Matt Rule, and this is not to say that they're terribly similar, because I don't think they are. I mean, if you watch Rule, they're personality-wise, I think they're pretty different.
Really?
A little bit. But the fact that I think they both know that they're going to ask and demand a lot of their guys. And so it's more important to have the guy they can ask and demand a lot of than the guy who might be 10% more talented, right? Like, I think Bob Knight firmly grasped that, and I think so does Coach Rule, where it's like, okay, I'm going to take this 3-star guy instead of this 4-star guy because I know that this 3-star guy has the mentality to go through what I'm asking him to do. And if the 4-star guy had it too, like, yeah, obviously you take the more talented version of that, but he's willing to sacrifice, I think, some top-end talent in order to have the guy that he is confident can.
You sacrifice talent for fit.
And fit is more, I think when people say fit a lot, I think they think of like scheme, right? That's what I mean a lot of the times when I say fit is, hey, if you are running a certain scheme, you want a quarterback that can do X, Y, Z. You want linemen that can do X, Y, Z. You want, linebackers that have certain skill sets. So a lot of times when you're talking about fit, you're talking about scheme. But what's maybe more important than the fit inside of a scheme is the fit inside of a culture, right? The fit inside of, hey, if I ask you to do this, I know that you're willing to go that place with me. And that's what I think Coach Rule brings to the table. And I think that's what Coach Knight brought to the table as well. Even though obviously from the outside, it's going to look really different. There is a lot of commonalities there in what they ask of their players and how they go get players because of that.
There is a lot of truth to the 50-50 there, the way that you just described fit and scheme and fit and culture. A lot of it goes hand in hand. But there is a lot of truth to that.
Oregon's a really good example of fit and scheme, right? Back in pre-Dan Lanning. So when you're going Chip Kelly, Mark Helfrich, even you want to go back to like Bellotti before that, is the fit and scheme allowed them to go get guys that were under-recruited because they knew they were going to be elite talents in their scheme. That, to me, is like a really good example of fit and scheme. And I think that's what a lot of times we default to when we're thinking about that. But if you're a guy like Coach Rule who doesn't really care what you run, he just wants to run. Like, I genuinely don't think Coach Rule has, like, we've seen it this year, right? He'll run whatever he has to run. But he can do that because of the fit and culture.
Well, and I think fit and culture is kind of what we think most about, though, with Coach Rule. We don't really think of fit and scheme.
Absolutely.
Even in the offseason, we thought when we used the term fit, it was fit and culture.
Yes.
Maybe other places like fit and scheme make more sense.
And I think even here before Coach Rule, like I think before Coach Rule got here, yeah, we talked about fit in terms of like, you kind of have to like understand Nebraska and understand this is sort of a different place. But a lot of times, I know for me specifically, part of the thing that I had an issue with Coach Frost was like, hey, I don't really feel like they've established an identity. So it's really hard to find guys that fit if you don't know who you are, right? But that's true of not just scheme. That's also true of identity. If you don't know or that's also true of culture. If you don't have the identity of the culture that you want to be, you can't find fit guys because you're just kind of throwing darts, right? You're guessing. And that's something that Coach Knight never did, was guess.
Speaking of Knight, can you remind me, or at least tell me, and I have the answer, but I want to know if you know it, why he was fired at Indiana? Like what they actually got him on. Not like everything that built up to it.
Sure.
What was the moment that they said, yeah, you're done?
Yeah, I am trying to remember. And it's honestly, I don't remember if the exact moment. I remember it feeling at the time, because this was 2000, right? He got fired in 2000, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And
that is absolutely correct.
I remember, I was 12, 13 years old, so I had an awareness of what was happening. And I don't remember what the exact thing was. I just remember it feeling like, they've been trying to pin something on him for a while.
So in 2000, Coach Knight was forced out of Indiana for violating a zero-tolerance behavior policy, which is kind of funny because it seemed like a lot of the things he was doing could have fallen under that zero-tolerance policy, by grabbing the arm of a freshman student whom he said greeted him by his last name.
Just Knight?
I don't know if it was just Knight. I don't know if he said Coach Knight, but can you imagine getting mad for somebody calling you by your last name, especially like an old head? Like when you think about respect, like respecting your elders, you would think saying their last name, Mr. Knight, or unless he said, hey, Knight in shining armor or something like that.
Or if he just called him Knight and he's like, hey, it's Coach Knight, something like that. I thought he had grabbed someone.
It's Coach Knight to you.
Yeah, I thought he had like grabbed someone either by the. I thought he had grabbed him by like the collar or something. That's a different incident of the many. But real quick before we hop into the next segment here, my favorite Bob Knight memory randomly is actually from Texas Tech. ESPN had a reality show where he was letting a walk-on on the team, and they like followed this process of the tryouts, and it was actually the most I ever respected Bob Knight, because you got to see way more of him coaching than you ever had before, and not just the antics. And it was actually kind of an incredible, like, especially in the early 2000s, like a really incredible sort of TV moment.
Why do you fall in love with athletes? Because there's documentaries on them and you get their lives in your hands.
Absolutely.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
I like to refer to this whole thing from start to finish as a real Mickey Mouse operation. But that'd be an insult to Mickey Mouse.
I'll paraphrase Churchill a little bit when he talked about the Battle of Britain. Never have so many thought they knew so much and actually knew so little. I don't think I would ever qualify as a biblical scholar. I mean, that's what I get paid to do.
No motivational device I've ever come across is as good as this.
Welcome back here to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla with Andrew Rogers. We are live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, Twitter, and YouTube. I finally got myself in the stream, guys. Don't worry about it. Hello to all our friends in the stream.
Hey, welcome.
Appreciate you guys listening along. Let's set up the show real quick so I don't forget.
Why?
Coming up, well, you know, I like to tell people what's going on.
Oh, really?
Coming up here at 8 o'clock, John Fanta. He covers college basketball on Fox as well as the Field of 68. Super excited to talk to John this morning as, man, we are not that far away from college basketball starting. Creighton's got their exhibition tomorrow, and then they kick off their season on Tuesday.
On a Tuesday. I'm happy you told me John Fanta's on at 8 o'clock. I don't think I would have known otherwise.
Yeah, see,
thank goodness you're setting up the show.
We got to let the people know. 8:45, we're going to try and win you some money with our guy Brian Edwards at Vegas Insider. And then at 9 o'clock, we will talk to our good friend Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7, and then we'll wrap up the show with a little Hurrdat Hot Seat today.
Yeah, can't wait. Going back to what you were saying going into the break, because you said Texas Tech was like your favorite story. It was a walk-on moment.
ESPN did this reality show where he literally let walk-ons on the team, and they were on the team the whole year.
I was trying to speed through what I meant, though, by documentaries and why people love, like nowadays, love getting involved in people's lives. Like, you have the Captain documentary with Jeter. I just started watching Vic's documentary.
Oh, I haven't seen that one
on
yet.
Espen. You have
I just watched
obviously
the Beckham
Last
one.
Dance.
Yeah.
You're watching the Beckham one. You get all of these things where you're like doing a deep dive into that person's life, and you kind of feel like a part of it now. And that's why you were saying you like Coach Knight, because you got to see more of his actual coaching and
more of his personality.
How he personality and winning process, though. And then that probably gave you a lot of respect for him too, based on what you know about him on paper. You got to see it in real life. And that the reason I bring that up too is we live in a society where everybody wants to be nosy in each other's business, in each other's lives, because of social media, because Facebook, Instagram, whatever. You see photos posted, videos posted. Ravi's at a wedding last weekend. Shane's doing a backflip. Like, there are things that you're just like, wow, like that. I just kind of liked experiencing that moment with you. And so documentaries kind of make us feel like it's social media on the TV. It's a social media long form story.
Yeah.
And that's why as people, as sports fans, as fans of just either a game, a person, or a literal team, that's why you get that feeling, that butterfly-ish feeling in your stomach, where you're just like, wow, like I'm one in this moment.
Yeah, it's connection, right? We want to feel connected through social media. We want to feel.
It's why we love GBR Rewind.
Yeah, because we feel connected
at Nebraska
to Coach Rule and the team in a way that we wouldn't otherwise. Social media allows us to feel connected to, people we went to high school with, people we went to college with, or maybe people we don't stay in touch with as much as we used to. We feel connected to them in a way that we wouldn't otherwise. That same thing with documentaries. Like, the reason I like The Last Dance is it's the most human I have ever seen Michael Jordan. That is the most honest, least buttoned up that I've ever seen Michael Jordan. And I loved that. And I love Michael Jordan. I've always loved Michael Jordan. But to see him as an actual human being for the first time was incredible. Like, that was so valuable to me, because it's like, because there's been times, especially, he had the Hall of Fame speech, which was kind of like, this guy's kind of seems like a bitter old man a little bit. And to actually see him like human and a person that I'm like, yeah, I actually like that guy, not just the basketball player, was really, really cool. And that's what I got out of that documentary with Bob Knight, because especially at that age, right? Because that was 2000 is when he got fired from Indiana. I think this happened in 2002, 2003. It was one of his first years in Indiana. At Texas Tech. So you're talking like a pre-social media world. So you're not seeing videos like the GBR Rewind stuff of Bob Knight at Indiana or Texas Tech. You don't know a whole lot about him except for, hey, he's won a lot of basketball games and he's a little crazy, right? Like, that's all you really knew about this guy. And so to get more information about him as a person, who he actually was as a coach, and because I had a really hard time understanding before that why players liked him. I was like, I wouldn't like this guy. He's yelling at people all the time. He's grabbing people by the collar. He's pushing people around. I don't want to deal with that. And to be honest, that's probably still not the kind of coach I gravitate to. But at least after I saw the documentary, I understood why. I understood there was more to him. And so I love sports documentaries for that purpose. And man, you mentioned that GBR Rewind. The clip of him in the locker room,
the one circling social media right now,
was
powerful.
And so we can get to other stuff with it, but
Shane has the clip.
One of the first things I thought was, what did Ethan Piper's mom say? Because she wasn't mic'd up or anything.
Well, because she said turn off the camera.
Yeah.
And so whoever edits the videos, I can't remember the film guy's name, but he just took down her volume and then raised it back up for reaction.
And I looked at her, and it pans over to her, and so you see her.
My guess is there had to be an expletive or two said.
It had to be. She's an offensive lineman's mom. She's salty, right? Like that. She's got to be. Shane, do you want to play that clip? Do you have it?
Now, as we walk out this tunnel, man, as we walk out this tunnel for the first time at the University of Nebraska, we have a pink ribbon on the back of our helmets. And obviously that's for all the wives, the moms, the sisters that have been affected by breast cancer, man. But it's even greater than that. It's a way for us to honor those in our lives, our mom, our grandmom, our girlfriend's mom, our aunt, the people in our lives who have fought for us. Because ain't none of us here of our own accord. Picking you up, taking you to school, fighting for you, taking a second job, battling, maybe keeping you away from the hard things in your life. She took it on so that you could just be a kid. Who is that for you? Who is that for you? Maybe it was your dad. Maybe it was a coach. But, man, they fought for you. They were warriors for you. These women that fight this battle, they're warriors. I saw it with my mom. I watched my mom battle breast cancer. I saw my mom fight. I watched my wife's mom fight. Knowing she probably was never even going to win the fight. Knowing that eventually she'd be up in heaven. Man, she was just fighting for 10 more minutes with her grandkid. 10 more minutes. She taught me how to fight. Who taught you how to fight? Who taught you how to be a warrior? A warrior doesn't need a weapon. A warrior is the weapon. You guys are warriors. You've been taught to fight. So as you take that field, fight for yourself. Fight for what you want. Fight for each other. But just remember who went to war for you in your life. Remember the woman that went to freaking war for you in your life, who sacrificed for you in your life. And whatever your job is today, standing there and cheering or catching a touchdown, man, do it without fear. Because every single day that my mom woke up fighting that battle, she had to do it with all the fear in the world, but put it aside to make sure my ass was good. That's who I go fight for today. As you walk up that tunnel, you see the ones that you love, look them in the eye. Don't tell them you love them. They're not here to watch you win. They're here to watch you. They're here to watch you be you. And some of us don't have our moms here. I don't have my mom here. My mom's watching somewhere across the country. She's going to feel my joy. Some of us don't have our moms alive anymore, or grandma, whatever. That's my wife. But she's going to honor the way that her mother taught her to fight. This ain't emotional. This is joy, man. We're here because of the ones that love us. So if you don't have family here today, walk by my wife, walk by my daughters. You got family. If you don't have someone here today, Mrs. Piper's here. Yeah. Her son's not here, but she's here. For us. Us. One word from Miss Piper. Give one word.
She said tacos after the game for everybody if they win.
I'll say orange slices are in the car, kids. No. I need to know what Mrs. Piper said.
That is such a moving pregame speech before Purdue, and that's not even like a lot of it is the messages for breast cancer, Pink October, but think about it as more of it's everybody was affected by cancer at some way, shape, or form in their life. They know somebody, a family member, a friend, whoever was affected by that satanic disease. And, the ability for Coach Rule to stand there and put together those words, I'm having trouble putting together words right now about it.
We'll get to that more coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back.
they fear you at times.
We
In
will
my
be
entire
back.
adult life, I've never used the expression game face, so I have no idea. But again, before you interrupted me, you have a real faculty for doing this. Thank you. No, I don't think it's anything to really be too proud of myself. In my entire adult life, I've never used the questions yet? Yes. No, I haven't. You've interrupted my answers with your questions, and then I've tried to get back. So let's finish this.
We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla with Andrew Rogers. We are brought to you by our friends at Dingman's Collision Center. They've got 4 great Omaha area locations. They've been in business, family owned and operated for 25 years. And they have been first place best of Omaha for the last 18 years running, because not only do they have the latest technology to work on any make and model, they also give back to the community. Make sure you check them out at dingmans.com for more information. Want to get back to that Coach Rule video, that clip that we played right before the break, and you mentioned, Coach Rule makes it more about more than just breast cancer. And the thing that really got to me was not just kind of, because, the Creighton, when they do their pink out, they make it about all types of cancer and things like that, even though specifically it's
the World Series did the I Stand Up for Cancer.
Yeah, and that's a very similar moment that Creighton does, even though it kind of originates with breast cancer. They kind of expand it out to all cancer, and they do the fundraiser for the American Cancer Society Hope Lodge down on Dodge Street. But what I thought was really interesting about the way, and this is kind of just a credit to the way Coach Rule communicates and connects with people, and just his ability to make a message that matters to everyone, is he took it even further to, like, it's not just, maybe not that many people in your life or anybody super close to you has had cancer, but it's about the people that fight for you, right? Because at the end of the day, like when you're dealing with like a mom or a spouse or a grandma or whoever that has cancer, one of the things you admire most about them is the fact that they're fighting, right? That they're fighting not just for themselves, they're fighting for the people around them, they're fighting for the people they love. And Coach Rule kind of got down to that core of what really moves us about these people that are fighting through these things and brought that to the team in a way of like, hey, maybe you don't know anybody that's had cancer, but you know somebody that's fought for you. You know, you wouldn't be here unless somebody had fought for you. And it's, I mean, just to be able to communicate that to a group of college guys and to, you know, it's kind of like it's a funny fine line for me because it would be really easy in that moment to get emotional kind of in the wrong way, right? Like to get kind of choked up and things like that. But he like rides that line of like reaching into your like heart and core, and instead of letting it be like, oh yeah, hey, that's kind of a sad or emotional thing, turning it to inspire you and to fire you up. And like, that's not easy to do. Like that's a tough subject matter to kind of navigate and still bring it to a place where, hey, now you want to go fight. Now you want to go run through that wall for whoever fought for you. And, you know, I got to give credit to Mrs. Piper too. We don't know what she said, but that clearly set off a fuse on him too. So maybe it was about the orange slices.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. No. So there was, there's a lot of points in that speech that kind of had my brain going a ton of different directions. You're right, though. It's hard to turn like a somber point into inspiration. And he did a great job doing that. But I also think that's such an attention getter for those guys, too.
Yeah.
When you start on something that is a little sadder, but can turn it into something that's motivating. And Coach Rule, he just knows how to do that.
Yeah, he's a master.
And I think that also has a little bit to do with his upbringing, because seeing his dad as a pastor, like pastors have to do that a lot, or you know, whoever is your speaker at a church service, like that is. Those are the things that you kind of have to tie into different messages. So I think he gained really good public speaking skills just by learning from his dad and going through life that way. But the other point of that speech was that stuck out to me is like you talk about fighting for somebody, but the sacrifices that he's talking about that these women do in our lives, like the love from your mom to you is so different than any other love that you can experience ever. Like I am such a mama's boy for that reason. I am. Like the love that my mom has for me, I know what it is, but I could never recreate it.
Sure.
As a guy, I could not recreate a woman's love because it's just there were two different personalities. And I talk about that with Ashley all the time on how like the nurturing side of things goes so much more to the women in our lives than it does for me, because I'm just not good at that. And I actually think guys themselves aren't good at that, but women are so good, which that's when he talks about with sacrifice. Like my mom puts love over anything else in her life, over anything, the love of her kids, the love of God, the love of her husband. Love supersedes everything in her life. And I admire that the most. And that's what makes me want to love.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what gave me, you know, every ability to, when I am treating a girl through, like when I'm dating girls in high school, like how I treat people, like same thing in college. Like I was never the type of guy that would just like go off and mess around and do things, because like that's not the love that was taught to me. And I think that's kind of what Coach Rule is saying to these guys is there's somebody out there that is that to you, whether that's your mom, whether that's an aunt, whether that's a grandmother. There is somebody out there that is that person to you, that sacrificed things for you. And he's using that point and can apply it to a ton of different backgrounds, to a ton of different demographics, because guys are picked up from all over the country. You don't know what their life was like before they got to Nebraska. But when you get to Nebraska, you're all brothers, and maybe you find out about it, maybe you don't, but you just know that everybody has a different background, and that love that is sparked from somebody in your personal life, like that's who you go out and fight for on the field every day. And that's what he's referring to. It doesn't have to be even about breast cancer in that moment.
Yeah.
It's just about love.
Yeah. And that to me is the impressive kind of part about the leap that he took from, hey, yeah, we've got the pink ribbon on our helmets, and that's where this starts, but that's not where it finishes. Right. And yeah, I think there's I know for me personally, and for a lot of people, whether it's your mom, whether it's both your parents, like I didn't realize until I was a lot older the sacrifices that were made on my behalf, right? Because a lot of times when you're a kid, you just don't get it, right? You just think, oh, that's what parents do or whatever. And then you meet people who that's not what their parents did. Like that's where
that's really like some parents are both working.
Yeah.
One parent's a stay-at-home mom.
Well, and not even just that, but like there's some people just don't have good family lives, right? Some people have a tough relationship with their parents. And I don't think I realized how much my parents sacrificed for my benefit until I met some of those people in my life where it's like, oh, their parents didn't do that. Their parents didn't have that. They didn't have that same relationship with their parents. And that's kind of where I appreciated it even more, because it was like, okay, not only did they sacrifice those things for me, but they never would have let me know. Like they never would have even hinted that it was a sacrifice because of that love that you're talking about. Like my mom, when I was a kid, when I got diagnosed with diabetes, I was 7 years old. My doctor was like insistent that I test my blood sugar in the middle of the night to make sure I was okay, because that's kind of a dangerous time for diabetics, because you're not monitoring anything, right? This is before continuous glucose monitors and stuff came out where you could monitor your blood sugar 24/7. So for years, my mom would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. She'd set an alarm, wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, come in, test my blood sugar without ever waking me up, test my blood sugar. If it was okay, she'd go back to sleep, leave me alone. If I needed something, if I needed a shot or if I needed some food or whatever, that's the only time she would wake me up. Is if she had to give me a shot, she'd give me the shot without waking me up.
That's crazy.
The only time she woke me up is when I needed food and I had to eat, and she couldn't physically feed me while I was asleep still, right? Like she did that for years. I can't imagine waking up in the middle of the night for years to do something like that, and she never has brought it up. The only reason I know it happened is because I remember the handful of times where I had to wake up and eat something in the middle of the night because my blood sugar was low. It's like, has never brought it up. It's never been a thing. And I think back on it, I was like, that must have been miserable.
And that's how I know too, that when you become a parent, it's a different kind of love. Because it starts when you're a baby, because you're doing all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
You have to get up in the middle of the night to tend to your baby. Yeah, but the fact that she made that such a point for you to do, or for her to do for you, and not even disrupt you in that moment either. I mean, it's just being a good parent.
She's
just a really good parent for doing that.
It would have been really easy and really reasonable for her to just make sure I was up and make sure I tested and do so I could do these things for myself, right? And eventually I did as I got older. But as I was like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, those first few years that I was diagnosed, she did it every day. And like it's stuff like that when Coach Rule's having this speech about like, think about the people that have fought for you, think about the women that have fought for you to get you to where you are here today. Like, my mom is where I learned how to fight. My mom is where I learned how to love. My dad's where I learned how to work hard. My dad's where I learned how, not that my mom didn't work hard too, but like that was one of the examples that my dad set. And, showing people you love them through how you work for them and things like that as well. But like Coach Rule said, like that's where I learned how to fight. Because I was like, if my mom's willing to fight for me in that moment, then I've got to be willing to fight for myself as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a shame if they stop doing pregame speech stuff, halftime speech stuff like this in Lincoln. I know Coach Rule doesn't want to continue it after this season. He's got to continue.
He's got it.
These videos have to keep going.
Please give us little snippets.
Well, and not only that, like there are people across the country now recognizing this. Like RG3 retweeted that video yesterday. Like these are things that it's such a recruiting tool for one, but also just it puts good spotlight on Nebraska. People want this. You got to keep doing it.
For the love of God, tell us what Mrs. Piper said.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
In my entire adult life, I've never used the expression game face, so I have no idea what it means or what you're supposed to do. But again, before you interrupted me, and you have a real faculty for doing that.
Thank you.
No, I don't think it's anything to really be too proud of myself. I think when I talked about Pat.
Bob, you came here to do an interview. I'm asking you questions.
When I talked, well, then let me finish the answer.
Okay.
Is that okay,
Go
Jeremy?
ahead.
Is that fair enough?
Please go right
Have I interrupted your questions yet?
Yes.
No, I haven't. You've interrupted my answers with your questions, and then I've tried to get back. So let me finish this.
An icon.
Yeah.
An absolute icon.
That is a Bob Knight, Jeremy Schaap interview that awkward, but kind of funny. We are brought to you right now as we kick off hour number 2 by our friends at Pratt Dental. Dr. Pratt is the first dentist in Nebraska to provide the BioClear method. They are located in North Platte, Nebraska. The BioClear method, if you're not familiar, can correct many aesthetic dilemmas in a permanent and less invasive manner than traditional treatments such as crowns. Pratt Dental, Pratt Dental can be reached at 308-221-2800. Pratt Dental, creating healthy smiles. Had a little tongue twister there for no apparent reason. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline is our friend John Fanta. He covers college basketball on Fox as well as the Field of 68. John, how are you this morning?
I am doing great, guys. It's great to see you. This means that the season is about to begin. We are 4 days away, 5 nights away from the season opener over in Omaha for the Creighton Blue Jays, and the Huskers opening up next week as well. But gentlemen, we're just 4 for others 5 nights away from college basketball starting. So to answer your question, I'm doing fantastic.
Hey, John, how many hotels are you prepared to stay in this season? Because it seems like you're already in one right now.
So I'll tell you what. I can't tell you. I don't know how much I annoy front desks, but I have a confession to make. I always ask for a blanket. Always ask for a blanket. Yes, because in the 6 to 9 hours that I'm in the hotel room during this time of year, I'm a bear in hibernation.
Why don't you bring your own blanket? Why do you trust the hotel blanket?
I don't know about that. I don't know. You bring your own blanket. I just think that's too much going on. I'm not going camping. You got
to travel light, John. You got to travel light.
Not going.
That's right. That's right. You try
hunting.
Yeah, exactly. Right. How many hotels do I stay in? Wow. I don't know. I mean, to answer your question, Andrew, I really don't. I don't know the answer to that. I'll tell you, in my visits to Nebraska, the hotel scene is good.
All right.
It's strong. I particularly the downtown Omaha scene is strong. That Marriott is, not to do free promotion. It's really good. And there's another property in downtown that's newer that I stayed in a couple years ago. It's really, really nice. So I like hitting. The nice thing about a lot of what I do. I mean, you guys know I cover a lot of the Big East. Mm-hmm. I say this to people all the time. What's great about that league? It's not a fly and drive league.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fly to a city and stay in the city league. You don't have to go outside of a town. So I'm okay with the hotel seat.
I was going to say, John, Big East is one of the only college conferences in the country where you're not dealing. I mean, like, I know we've heard nightmare stories about trying to get to like State College, Pennsylvania and places like that. I mean, the Big East, you're talking Omaha might be the smallest city. I think Omaha, is the smallest city in the Big East, pretty close to it.
Yeah, I would say it's, but you know what? Omaha is not, I don't look at it that way.
Sure. Yeah.
At all. I mean, great restaurant scene, great, like elite bar scene. I think Omaha, I think the world of Omaha. I mean, it's an awesome area. And, I'd be lying to you guys if I said I haven't tried my chances at the local slots.
Me too.
And other gaming. So if you're a fan and you're ever if you're ever hanging out and you see me at a casino, feel free. Let's play. Let's win together. But here's what's that?
I said, say less.
Yeah, I'm all in for that. But I'll tell you what, Omaha, it's a great city, and many a night at the Crescent Moon for me.
Well, John, my wife works in the restaurant industry in Omaha, so we might have to go explore the restaurant scene together in Omaha next time you're in town.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Robbie. That's going to happen. Mark it down. I'm all in to join you.
And now, John, before we get into college basketball questions, and of course we want to get deep into the Big East, I want to start here because we let off the show with it. I feel like most, sports shows across the country, afternoon shows yesterday, all hit on Bob Knight, one of the greatest and most well-known college basketball coaches all time. On and off the court, though, John, how would you describe Bob Knight's legacy?
Well, let's start with on the court and who he was as a winner. And that's where you have to start, because 902 victories, 6th all-time in college basketball history, 3 national championships at Indiana. Now, let's paint it for what it is. The reason why Indiana is ever brought up as one of the main brands in college basketball is Bob Knight. When you think of people synonymous with a program, Bob Knight is in a class of his own with where he stands in Indiana basketball history. And you know why I say that? Because his life was very controversial. His legacy is very controversial. The fact is, he let his anger get to him at times that ended up costing him from having an even larger legacy. It's amazing when you think about the fact that this is a man who was removed from his job at Indiana for doing some things with a player that you simply can't do as a coach. You can't physically contact your players, and a student on the campus of the university. And that was able to be mended, but the school was approving and okay with him coming back as much as he did after that fact, once the quote unquote dust cleared. And that last night, when tributes are pouring in for him, as journalists or as broadcasters, as reporters, we have to talk about the tough stuff. But I would think that my takeaway from last night is, at the end of the day, whether you loved Bob or whether you didn't like Bob, what you could say about Bob is that his basketball knowledge and will to win was a standard setter in a sport that is rich with them. Bob Knight is one of the absolute greatest winners, and at the same time, one of the most intimidating figures in sports history. For him particularly, it's in that intimidation that he willed his teams to win.
We're talking with John Fanta, covers college basketball on Fox as well as the Field of 68. Really good stuff there about Bob Knight. Let's move on to the Big East here. That's kind of where we live, obviously. I've said many times that I think Creighton this year, because of fit with some of the guys that have left and that they're being replaced with, could actually be a little bit better than last year's team. Now, what does that look like in March? I don't know. But I think in the regular season, they could be a better basketball team. Is that a hot take or is that a reasonable take?
I think it's a reasonable take. I like this team's pieces even more than I like last year's pieces. Now, just because you have pieces that we like more doesn't mean that you're going to be sitting in a regional final. Things have to align sometimes. You became fortunate to face a 15 seed, right? nothing wrong with that. You won those games. Nobody's going to take that away from you at all. It's the greatest season in program history, right? Going to that Elite Eight. The other time that Creighton was in it, there were only 8 teams in the tournament, as Greg McDermott brings up, and he's absolutely right. For me, though, guys, at times last year, like Creighton still lost 13 games. And they went through a very rough spell last year. And the reason for that was, one, Ryan Kalkbrenner and the illness that he dealt with. But the other one is they weren't moving the ball because guys were out to get theirs. And I'm going to peek behind the curtain here and give you guys something that I think is revealing. But I'll be quite honest with you guys. A couple of players on that team that then were aspiring to go to the next level, all right, or to transfer. And we know who those kids are, and they leave a legacy at Creighton. I'm not going to take away anything from them, all right? But I will say to you guys on this show that one of those guys during the season and then following the season, I was getting text messages from people in his circle of them telling me all the things that he does in the game, all of his stats, and how we, the media, should be projecting him on social media and in our coverage about his pro prospects. I got to be honest with you guys. We don't get that with a lot of players. It's not wrong. It's not right. I'm not here to criticize, but I did feel like that at times last year there were certain elements of that Creighton team where guys got to get theirs. Guys got to get theirs, and as a result, the system, the offensive philosophy that Greg McDermott has succeeded so much in, sometimes became I've got to stop here. I've got to get mine, and the ball stopped. And that wasn't Creighton basketball. So that team was great. That team ended up being great. But this team's not losing 13 games. They are not. They are not, because Stephen Ashworth, a 23-year-old point guard from Utah State, comes in and understands his role of setting up the players around him while also contributing a lot. But when you have Baylor Shireman and Trey Alexander, two of the best shot makers in college basketball, you got to get them the ball.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. I could not agree more.
John, it's funny you tell that story about, a player's people around them messaging you and stuff like that, because I have a feeling it's the same player that slid in my DMs last year as well. So I'm right there with you and can corroborate the strangeness of some of the things going on last year. But you mentioned Stephen Ashworth. I think one of the things, just from a pure basketball standpoint, that I like the most about the change from Ryan Nembhard to Stephen Ashworth, you mentioned getting Baylor Shireman and Trey Alexander the ball. Do you think, and you mentioned the ball stopping, do you think the fact that Ashworth is a much better pure shooter than Nembhard allows the ball to be in Shireman and Trey Alexander's hands a little bit more? Because Shireman was a true point guard at SDSU, and Trey Alexander probably needs to show some point guard skills for the next level. How much do you think that makes them more difficult to defend? Because instead of having Ryan Nembhard having the ball 90% of the time, you've got 3 different guys that you have to worry about in that sense.
That's exactly it. And Ashworth does shoot the basketball at a high level. And as a result, you're exactly right. You've got to account. It's really hard for an opposing defense because you're going to have to pick your poison a little bit. You're talking about 3 guys that are going to shoot 40% or better from 3. So you've got to hope one of them's having an off night and almost pick that person. As much as a team on offense picks a hot hand, you have to identify who you're willing to bet on that could have a cold hand on a given night. But to me, Greg McDermott made a really interesting point last week at Big East Media Day, that Stephen Ashworth understands that when he gives up the ball, he might not get it back. That's a really interesting quote from a coach, because everybody in 2023 wants the ball. Everybody wants the ball. And Ashworth knows who's around him, and he doesn't take it personally. But you're right. I mean, the fact that they could, if they want to get creative, that Trey Alexander, he can handle it. He's an NBA player. He's going to be an NBA player, and he's only gotten better. The way that the staff talks about his work rate and his toughness and the way he's evolved, those are things that stand out. He's not the same guy as last year, which was already a really good player. So that's what makes them more dangerous is Nembhard, sometimes his shots would come and go. There's no denying what kind of a lead ball handler he was and the leadership that he provided. And he'll provide that for Mark Few and Gonzaga. But to me, Stephen Ashworth is a guy he's cut from the same cloth as Mitch Ballock.
Yep.
With his demeanor, with his fit. Sometimes there are transfers. And I'll say sometimes it's actually rare that you say about a transfer that's 23. Oh my gosh, has he been with this program for 5 years? But Ashworth is like that for this team.
He feels like a Creighton guy.
He feels like a Creighton guy, and Nembhard did too.
Yeah.
But to me, I think that these pieces are going to fit into place better. And the thing is, guys, at the end of the day, when you have a rim protector and a negator from 15 feet and in, that wins a lot of games for you. Ryan Kalkbrenner doesn't even get discussed enough nationally, and he's getting discussed more. But that guy is as good as any big in America.
A difference maker, 100%. You made me laugh yesterday too, John, because I can't remember which show it was, but T.O. claimed the ACC was the second best conference in college basketball, and it seemed like that hit you personally.
Well, he was just wrong. That was a violation. I just, my God, I'd like to think that was a preview of Thanksgiving tables in America in 3 weeks, but I couldn't take it. I could not take it. I wasn't good. Here's the deal. If you're saying that you think the ACC is going to be better than people expect, I'm not going to sit here and disagree with you. I think North Carolina will have a redemption season with Armando Bacot back. I think Virginia's getting undervalued heading into this season. I actually think Virginia Tech is a team that's going to surprise. I think Syracuse will be better with Judah Mintz and J.J. Starling, who transferred in. So I'm like, I don't mind the idea that the ACC could be better than people think because we put them down so bad as the outsiders, as the people who cover the sport in recent years, because they deserved it.
Yeah.
But if part of your argument is the Big East is overrated, what on earth are you discussing? I mean, that to me is absurdity. I'm going to tell it like it is. If a league's not very good, I'll tell you the Big East is poised for an okay year. You guys have had me on. We're going to tell it like it is. Outside of DePaul, who still is at the bottom and is firmly at the bottom, I don't think there's no bad team in this league. And we're saying bad. When I say bad, I'm saying like sub 120. I think every other team in this league is capable of a really good night to great night. And St. John's, for the longest time, has been the wild card. I don't mean to be I would be very, very candid here. I made this reference, okay? In the last 10 years before this, St. John's basketball has been like having an alcoholic drive you home. Why on earth? You don't know where you first off, you should never have that happen. And secondly, you don't know where the car's going.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't know where we've had no idea. It's a risky. It's been a program. You cannot bet on anything they're going to do. You have no idea what they're going to do. Well, they finally switched out and said, we got to get this right. Guys, they lost an exhibition game this past weekend. They were missing over half their team. Rick Pitino is going to win at St. John's. he makes them more competent than they've been in the last 10 years. Creighton now has to, when they go out to St. John's, it's no longer, Creighton, they'll probably win that game. It's more, God, that's going to be a challenging game.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't been saying that before with St. John's. And he overhauled the roster. Jordan Dingle, Joel Soriano are going to shine. Marquette's one of the best teams in the country. Creighton's one of the best teams in the country. UConn's still one of the best teams in the country. And they're the reigning national champions. And I don't feel like, we're talking about Marquette and Creighton first in the Big East, and rightly so, but they're the reigning national champions. Villanova crushed it in the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. That team, to me, if they fail, there's got to be serious questions asked of the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Providence has Bryce Hopkins and Devin Carter. Those are 2 all-league players. The question is, can Kim English weave it together? And I don't think Seton Hall's as bad as people are saying, because Kadari Richmond's still there. Dre Davis is still there. Alamir Dawes is still there. And they brought in Dylan Adewusu from St. John's.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier has Sean Miller, and we haven't even said their name yet.
That's a great point.
You're telling me the Big East is going to be weak, or is going to be weaker than the ACC? Come on. What was child, please. Child, please. What was T.O. drinking the other morning? He lives down in South Carolina. I know he's got some moonshine down there, but don't start at 9 a.m.
John, I did want to talk to you about UConn real quick. I mean, we could probably go like another hour with you, but we won't do that.
I wish.
I know. I want to talk about UConn because, as you mentioned, they are a little bit of an afterthought after Marquette and Creighton this year, but they are the defending national champion. They have pieces that a lot of people like, but they do lose key pieces from last year's national championship team. What are your expectations for them in being able to replace like a Sonogo and a Hawkins? I know people like Jordan Clingan, but obviously you're asking a lot more of him this year than was asked of him before.
Well, I think that Donovan Clingan's poised to be that guy for his team. Obviously, he's been dealing with a foot injury the last 4 weeks. I think he'll be back at some point, whether it's game 1 or game 3. I don't think he'll miss any major time.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, what UConn's success comes down to is, can Tristan Newton continue to be the stabilizer he is at point guard? Will Stephon Castle live up to the hype? 5-star recruit. Oh, he's a high level recruit who can make a bunch of things happen for his team. Physical guard. He's physically ready for the NBA. Shot-making guard. I love the kid. Cam Spencer comes in from Rutgers. High-level sharpshooter.
Mm-hmm.
Hit a lot of big shots in the Big Ten. Nebraska fans know that. To me, this is a guy that really fits the UConn system like a glove. He's an ultra competitor. Alex Caravan is very steady. I think for UConn, it's developing a 7 to 8 man rotation. Last year's team was so successful because they had unbelievable depth.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable depth. They could go from Sonogo to Clingan. They could go from Hawkins to Naheem Aline. This year's team, I'm a little bit questioning of their depth because they're going to rely on freshmen to provide it. And that's hard. That's harder. But if Clingan takes off to the level that he does, and Castle is, in fact, top 10 pick worthy good, which a lot of people in circles believe he will be, and I've watched him practice. I was very impressed. That's the path. That's the path. Because you're going to have steady presences between Spencer, Caravan, and Newton, who's a veteran. And there's something about it, guys, when you win at the level that you see this with when we talk about Creighton. When you win now at the level that UConn's won at, where they won a national title, confidence can result in winning. It's just, there's something infectious about it. There's an expectation now in that building from the guys who were on the title team last year of what it takes to win. You can't quantify that in any stat. And they run really good stuff offensively. They're extremely well coached. They defended their tails off in the tournament. That's my question. Can they defend with a lot of new? Andre Jackson was indispensable on both ends, but defensively he really was. That loss is a big hole.
John Fanta, he covers college basketball on Fox as well as
I wish we could just keep you, John.
The Field of 68. John, I'm sure we will talk to you again very soon. We much appreciate your time.
I'll tell you what, if I'm in Omaha in person this year and you guys are open to it, I would do a show with you. Full
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Full yes. Absolutely. Rubber stamping that thing. Let's do it.
I'm in. And can I make a bold prediction before I leave?
Let's do it.
Always.
I said this last night on the Field of 68. For the first time in a decade, Nebraska ball will dance this year.
Oh, mark that down, John Fanta.
With the hot take on the way out. John, we appreciate you, man.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks, JF.
See ya.
We will be back. We will be back.
Just keep you,
The
John.
Field of 68. John, I'm sure we will.
Guys are open to it. I would do a show with you.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Full yes.
This year.
Oh, mark that down, John Fanta.
With the hot take on the way out. John, we appreciate you, man.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks, JF.
See ya. I'll tell you what. If I'm an Omaha,
I'm sure we will talk to you again very soon. We much appreciate your time.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
I'll tell you what. If I'm in Omaha in person this year, and you guys are open to it, I would do a show with you.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Full yes. Absolutely. Rubber stamping that thing. Let's do it.
I'm in. And can I make a bold prediction before I leave?
Let's do it.
Always.
I said this last night on the Field of 68. For the first time in a decade, Nebraska ball will dance this year.
Oh, mark that down, John Fanta.
With the hot take on the way out. John, we appreciate you, man.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks, JF.
See ya.
I am so sorry to all of our listeners out there because John Fanta's segments always go long on this show.
They do.
And you probably had some random commercial that cut into that, but we made sure to play the big drop.
The hot take.
The big hot take to open this segment so that everybody could hear what John Fanta had to say about Nebraska ball.
Yeah, it's we love talking to John. It's really hard to stay on clock with him because, like I said in the interview, we could keep him for the whole show. And
I said this last night on the field of 68. For the first time in a decade.
I bet he's going to say something about Nebraska.
Nebraska ball will dance this year.
Whoa! Called it, John.
Yeah, no, we love John. We appreciate him joining us. And if you didn't hear, because I'm sure we got cut off on air on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, make sure you go to YouTube or wherever you find your podcasts, and that segment will be up in its entirety, so you can hear the last couple minutes there with John Fanta. That's on us. It's just so hard to stop talking to the guy because he's a ton of fun to talk to.
Nebraska ball will dance this year.
I think Shane is more excited than anybody.
I think Shane is pumped. I'm also pumped to tell you about our friends over at Rockbrook Camera. They are not just about selling you a camera. They're trying to help you become the best photographer and a real photographer, whatever that means for your life. I'm real more of a casual, just capture my memories, that type of thing. And they've got me covered. They've also got professionals covered. We heard Kevin Such yesterday talk about he's
covered.
He's covered with his purchase from Rockbrook Camera as well. And he mentioned they give you support after the sale. They've got classes that you can learn your new equipment and learn how to use some of the latest technology they've got available for you, like mirrorless cameras. You can trade in your old gear to upgrade or check out their extensive rental department. Make sure you go to rockbrookcamera.com or check them out at 168th and West Center in Omaha or 70th and Pioneer in Lincoln.
I have a question, Ravi.
Andrew Rogers.
Oh, thanks for calling on me.
Yeah.
Does Rockbrook Camera sell glasses that also allow the ability to record?
I'll have to ask. I don't think that's where Connor Stallions got his his spy gear. Honestly, with the level of ineptitude with Connor Stallions, I'm guessing he bought those on Amazon or Wish. Maybe that feels like a Wish purchase.
It's deals.com.
Yeah, where he's just like, ooh, spy glasses, love it.
You know what's so funny about those things? He probably, like the dot that's in the corner that says when it's recording, because you can get them off Amazon. I think it was Pat McAfee in his show that did deep digging to figure out where you can get those shades. But the best part is if you take Inspector Gadget or I'm trying to who's the worst spy you can think of? Not like Cody Banks, who's a Disney star, but the worst spy that you can think of.
Michael Scarn.
Okay.
Michael Scott's alter ego from The Office.
Yes. So imagine the music that they would use in The Office. Okay. For something like that.
For Threat Level Midnight.
Take the theme song of 007 from the N64.
Mm-hmm.
Dun, 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 dun. So I imagine that being played in his head while he's going like this behind coaches. He's smacking
that N64 game was sweet though.
That's an all-time great video game, GoldenEye. Love it. But yes, I can imagine just in his head him being he's hiding behind coaches and stuff, trying not to get
the overhead camera view that showed the player running out of bounds,
and he's got his head down, so discreet.
This dude thinks he's sneaky. I think he really thinks he's a real life James Bond.
I think he does. He's very much if we ever make a movie about his life, I think we need to ask the creators of The Office if we can call it Threat Level Midnight.
You could use either Triple X from that movie because he's pretty bad, or Agent Cody Banks.
Bad. I brought up Cody Banks, and
but Cody Banks is a child. It's understandable he's not a good spy. This man went to the Naval Academy. That's the wildest thing.
He was also a Marine, but he was never stationed overseas.
Yes.
I believe he was only in California.
So Johnny English, you could use that.
That's the wildest thing about this whole Connor Stallions thing is he went to the Naval Academy. He's not an idiot. Those service academies are as hard to get into as any school in the country. You have to get letters from senators and stuff like that. I know people that have gone to the Air Force Academy, and it's very similar requirements to get into any of them. it's basically like getting into an Ivy League school. Like, it is that selective.
Mm-hmm.
And so this dude is not an idiot. At least on paper, he is not an idiot. But in practice of trying to be a spy for Michigan football, he seems like the dumbest man alive. Like, he seems like Michael Scott bumbling through making a spy film. Like, if Michael Scott decided to make a football movie instead of a knockoff of James Bond, it would be the Connor Stallion story.
What did we say? It was after the show yesterday. We were talking about different segments, and we wanted to do a segment on the worst spies in history and where Connor Stallions would rest with them. What if we come up with the name of the manifesto? Do you remember, like, we were talking about things?
Yeah.
And it was like, that's the name of the manifesto. We both had like this light bulb moment. What was it?
Gosh, I should have written it down.
Oh,
I don't remember.
Goodness. We'll probably talk it out.
We'll figure it out. I can't believe that this dude like wrote a 600-page manifesto that he updated every day. And he was just like, you know what? He didn't think like in 600 pages, he didn't think of how not to get caught.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't think of like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be on a sideline where there are cameras everywhere. Like, I get you're wearing the gear, my guy, but you just never occurred to you that somebody might see you on camera and be like, hey, doesn't that guy work at Michigan?
And it's funny too, because like he didn't wear like Adidas shoes, so he covered up his Nike shoes so that he could stand on the sidelines and try to stay incognito. He got probably a shirt from the Spirit Shop.
I do want to know how he got on the sideline, like, because somebody had to issue
he had
him
a pass on. Did you see that?
Right, so somebody had to issue him that pass. That's what I mean.
Or it was a fake pass and he just got through.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine Central Michigan
Yeah.
having as strict of guidelines to get onto the field as Nebraska.
Sure. I've been to some smaller schools where, the security wasn't exactly the tightest in the world, where if you had anything that resembled a press pass, they're just like, go ahead. Or
I'm not saying it's like high school where you just walk down to the track and you're in.
Yeah, right. But I'm guessing that there's less scrutiny at Central Michigan than there are other places. I don't understand, like, okay, it's probably a better view than the stands, but like, how much more is he getting from like cheap, like eyeglass camera than he would from the stands with an iPhone that actually zooms? Like, I have to imagine the quality is
that's got to be the only way that you can on the sidelines get away with seeing the signs and stealing the signs. But
he could have seen it from how is that better than being in the stands?
It's just funny too, because it's night.
And he's wearing sunglasses.
Think about it, he's wearing sunglasses at night.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of like the funny thing to me at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's like,
not only that he's wearing like spy glasses that you would find at like your neighborhood magic store.
Yeah. he does look like he got him at a magic store. Or like, honestly, he looks like he got the Michael Scott spy kit. Like, he ordered.
I remember going to Barnes and Noble and getting like the magic box from there and thinking that was the coolest thing ever. Like, he went and like dug up a spy kit from some random store and goes, this is going to be the best purchase of my life.
It's like, this is going to change everything.
This is chapter 47
of the manifesto.
Collect spy gear. Take over
CMU infiltration.
Yeah, exactly. Take over Tommy.
I don't understand it. I'm fascinated by it, and at the same time befuddled just at the level of like lack of self-awareness to think that you could get away with this. And listen, he did for a couple years, so I guess good on him, but I feel like going down to the sideline is that level of arrogance where it's like, hey, maybe we didn't think this one all the way through. Like, he'd gotten away with it for a couple of years, so he's like, I'm going to kick it up a notch instead of just continuing to do the thing that was working. Unbelievable from Connor Stallions. Just unbelievable stuff there.
There's
so many.
Did you see too yesterday night? I think it was Pete Thamel that wrote an article about how the Big Ten had a conference call. They want Tony Petitti to take action right now and punish, because he has that ability.
He does.
The NCAA doesn't right now.
Not yet.
But the Big Ten can.
Yeah.
They are begging Tony Petitti to do something about this.
Ryan Edwards coming up next. Let's see if we can make you some money.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Now, Vegas insider, senior handicapper, and fan of the cold Budweiser bottles, Brian Edwards.
It's got to be touchdown, touchdown, touchdown.
Brian Edwards.
I don't really love it.
Brian Edwards.
Were they using the cream cheese to butter the bagels?
Brian Edwards.
I'm going with the cowgirl.
Here is Brian Edwards.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here as we get to our friend Brian Edwards in just a minute. I want to tell you about Warhorse Sportsbook. They are the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. You can do so at the casino in Lincoln or at Horseman's Park in Omaha, 6303 Q Street. That's right. You can place sports bets in Omaha now through Warhorse Sportsbook at Horseman's Park. You can bet on just about every major sporting event, straight bets, parlays, props, live in-game bets, which I would know. I have a special weakness for my live in-game bets. Visit warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook or get the Warhorse Casino app for details and the full list of house rules. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. As we are efforting our friend Brian Edwards here to get to his picks.
He's here.
We have him, Shane. Oh, great. Brian Edwards joining us now, Vegas Insider. B, how are you this morning?
Good morning, gentlemen. Sorry for the I had a little internet snafu there for a moment, but I'm all good now. What's happening?
Not too much. I apologize. I caught you mid-drink there as you're kind of settling in.
That was purposeful.
You know, yeah,
You're just a jerk.
Well, many people have said. Brian, I know we've got a crazy busy slate of games, especially in the SEC. The biggest matchup maybe, but maybe a bigger line than people are expecting is that Missouri and Georgia game. Mizzou comes in at number 12 in the college football playoff, but they are a 15.5-point dog to the Dogs. How you feeling about that one, B?
I like Missouri and the over. I think I'm going to have just a small bit more invested on the over, just because I don't know what to make of last week, whether my Gators just suck that bad or if Georgia's decided to crank it up a level or two now that we've reached the stretch run. I think it's probably a little bit of both, but I'm still confident enough in what I've seen out of Missouri to like them, and I like all quality teams catching more than 2 touchdowns, especially when you've had 2 weeks to prepare like Missouri has. They could easily be 8-0. They are 7-1 straight up, 5-3 ATS. All 3 of their SEC wins have been by 17 points or more. They also have a very quality win over K-State. They've only been beaten by more than 10 once in their last 19 games, so that's obviously relevant with catching 15 or 15.5. They're 4-1 ATS last 5 as road underdogs. As for the over, so we've got 2 quarterbacks playing extremely well. The over's on a 5-1 run for Mizzou. Now, their last game went under, but I thought it was mainly because Xavier Legette got hurt for South Carolina, who I believe was either second or third. No, probably third behind Burden and Neighbors in the SEC in all the receiving categories going into that game. But Legette got hurt early in that game. And then there were 6 straight scoring drives that all ended in made field goals, which is poison for an over. But again, over still 5-1, Mizzou's last 6. The over is also hit in 5 straight for Georgia, combined scores of 63, 57, 64, 70, and 47. 47 being the outlier that would go under this week's number. But yeah, two good quarterbacks. And Missouri, in its last 5 games, has scored on its own. That is 34, 38, 39, 38, and 34. So let's go over and Mizzou.
B, I'm going to skip the next game that you sent us and jump into the big one, the premier game on Saturday night, Bama LSU. You like the over in this game, which I was hoping that you'd have a play on this game. Selfishly, it is one of my pick'ems this week that I have to decide between these 2 teams, which has been my hardest pick of the week, at least, because LSU's defense really banged up, especially in the secondary. But that offense is similar to what we saw in 2019 that is just so high-powered. I'm leaning LSU right now just because I think it's a race to whoever scores like 42 or 45 points on their own. And this just seems like one of those games that's going to come down to a last-second field goal or a last-second touchdown. Seeing that the over's only in the 60s, this, I think, could even reach into the 70s and 80s.
Question number 1.
Yes, so I agree. As for the side, I've been saying for weeks LSU is going to win this game outright. But like you noted, Andrew, the defensive injuries, especially Mekhi Wingo, has got me a little hesitant. In my little contest I'm in where I have to pick 25 different sides, I'm still going to pick LSU, but I haven't bet it yet. So I like the over. Got it at 60 early in the week. It's 61 now. That's fine with me. The overs hit in all 8 games for LSU this year. In fact, it's hit in 12 straight and 15 of its last 16. They're number 1 in the nation in total offense and scoring with a 47.4 points per game average, number 3 in passing yards, 13 in rushing yards. On the flip side, 91 nationally in total defense and versus the pass, 85 in run defense, 77 scoring D, and that's even with giving Army a bagel last time out. And overs 3-0-1 for Bama in its last 4, albeit at smaller totals. And this is tied for the highest total for Bama. So for Bama standards this year, it's a high total, but not so much for LSU. And I think we're going to get a ton of points. Give me the over 60-61.
We're talking with Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider. I want to stick with the SEC for a second here. Ole Miss is a 3-point favorite over A&M. It feels like we've kind of forgotten about Ole Miss as they kind of got written off after that loss to Alabama, but maybe Alabama's better than we gave them credit for at the time. And Ole Miss has just continued winning. Which side do you like in that Ole Miss Texas A&M game?
Love Ole Miss -3 here. They're undefeated in 5 home games this year, 4-1 against the spread. The only non-cover was when they were laying double digits and beat Arkansas by only 7. A&M 0-2 straight up and ATS on the road this year. In fact, they've lost now just outright. I'm not sure on the ATS their last 8 on the road, but they've lost outright in 8 straight road games. It started with a 29-19 loss in Oxford in 2021. And again, just outright, not ATS. Lane Kiffin, 19-2 in his last 21 home games, straight up. The only losses by 8 combined points to Alabama and Mississippi State last year. I think we've got the better quarterback in Jackson Dart. I think we've got the better head coach. I know we've got home field advantage, and this number is too small. Give me Ole Miss -3.
Oklahoma State B, Oklahoma. Rivalry game. Okie State given 6 points. You like the +6. Oklahoma, though, in a position to bounce back after that loss to KU last week. Even if they still win, you still think Okie State covers?
I do. I think Mike Gundy has done maybe his best job ever, which is saying a lot. And going back almost a decade, last 8 for Oklahoma State as a home underdog. They're 7-1 straight up and ATS, won outright 7 times. And they've caught fire this year after a rough September. They've won 4 in a row, straight up and ATS, won by margins of 7 or more. Their running back, Ollie Gordon's been the catalyst. In the last 2 games, he's run for 271, 282, and a total of 6 touchdowns in those 2 games. And then going back, the 3 prior to that, he ran for 168, 136, and 121 for the season now. 1,087 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns, 7.7 yards per carry average. And Oklahoma's 53 in the nation in run defense. So I think Gordon has another big game. I like Oklahoma State's chances to win outright. I'll take them plus the points. I might get a little +190 to +200 money line for a smaller amount.
B, let's move on to the NFL. Eagles and Cowboys have that rivalry in the NFC East.
You mean Cowgirls?
Eagles are -3. You like the Eagles there?
I do, but I like A.J. Brown's over receiving yards even more. I'm just shocked that they didn't make it higher this week. Last week was the highest at 88.5. He went over it again. I've had it 6 weeks in a row for winners. He's had 127 receiving yards or more in 6 straight games. And it goes from 88.5 down to 80.5. I mean, I know Dallas has got a good defense, but please, they just love getting beat on this. I don't understand the odds makers. It's crazy. I mean, I would put it in the low hundreds, or, 105 at least. But I also like Philadelphia -3 a lot. Dallas has been dominant at home, not so much on the road. 2-2 straight up in ATS on the road, and Philly undefeated at home. 6 of Eagles' 7 wins this year by 5 or more, all by at least 3. And there was talk of Jalen, being banged up with his knee. All he does is lead a comeback last week, 319 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. I like Eagles -3 and AJ over.
B, 45 seconds here. You're back on the A.J. Brown, Kyle Pitts train, huh?
Yeah, so I hadn't seen the number on Pitts yet. It wasn't up last night like AJ's was. As long as I'd probably like it at 45 or so. But it's probably going to be mid-30s. I like Kyle Pitts over. It might be a 3-hour sweat because of Arthur Smith's incompetence. But
don't worry, you got Taylor Heineke now, though.
I know. I think Heineke will go to him more, and it's been a 3-hour sweat 2 weeks in a row. But the 2 before that, I've had this 4 weeks in a row for winners. The 2 before that hit before halftime, and he can get it on 1 catch, if it's 40 or less. So, over.
Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider. B, we appreciate it as always, and let's make some money this week.
Thanks, fellas. You have a great weekend.
You're the man.
That's Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider. Coming up next, our Husker insider. We've got Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Let's do it.
We will be back.
She taught me how to fight.
We will be
Then
back.
she'd be up in Epste's mom. They fought. They were warriors. These women that fight this battle, they're warriors. I saw it with my mom. She took it on so that you could just be a kid. Who is that for you? Who is that for you? Maybe it was your dad. Maybe it was a coach. But then they fought. They were warriors. These women that fight this battle, they're warriors. I saw it with my mom. It's a way for us to honor those in our lives. Now, as we walk out this tunnel, man, you walk out this tunnel for the first time in the University of Nebraska, there's a big ribbon on the back of the line. It's not that.
We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Now, as we walk out this tunnel, man, as we walk out this tunnel for the first time at the University of Nebraska, we have a pink ribbon on the back of our helmets. And obviously that's for all the wives, the moms, the sisters that have been affected by breast cancer, man. But it's even greater than that. It's a way for us to honor those in our lives, our mom, our grandmom, our girlfriend's mom, our aunt, the people in our lives who have fought for us. Because ain't none of us here of our own accord. Picking you up, taking you to school, fighting for you, taking a second job, battling, maybe keeping you away from the hard things in your life. She took it on so that you could just be a kid. Who is that for you? Who is that for you? Maybe it was your dad. Maybe it was a coach. But but man, they fought for you. They were warriors for you. These women that fight this battle, they're warriors. I saw it with my mom.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla with Andrew Rogers. We are on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. We are joined now to kick off this third hour with our friend Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Bruntz, how are you this morning?
Not bad. What's up?
Michael, do you have your Connor Stallions recording glasses on this morning?
Yes, I do. I'm currently buying tickets to every college football game that I can find right now for my friend.
Listen, you got for your friend, for what you will pay them to go to on
and
Venmo,
you'll Venmo them and
publicly.
let them know that you bought tickets to the game.
my very public Venmo account. Yeah.
No, you seem more like a Cash App guy.
I don't even know what that is.
That's what Connor Stallions would say.
I got to write a check and I got to balance my checkbook while I'm sitting there writing it. That's how old I am.
I can't even remember the last time I wrote a check.
Dude, you know what the last?
I don't know
time
if I've
wrote
ever
a
written a check.
was?
What's that?
I was buying soup.
You had to write a check to buy soup. What happened here?
There was a great soup place here in Lincoln. Shout out to Grateful Bread. And they don't take cards, but they take cash and they take checks. And I didn't have cash, but I had a check. Wanted some soup. I went and wrote a check for soup, guys.
So was it like junky? Was it like a $4 check? Like what?
No, I mean this is like good soup. This is like really good. Not like Yev Kassem type stuff from Seinfeld, but like good soup.
No soup for you.
So you got a couple things of soup. You got some cheese scones. You got a giant chocolate chip cookie. So it wasn't like it was like a $7 check or anything. It was you needed to write a check.
Imagine if you were in Seinfeld, you went after George, who said medium crab bisque, and Bruntz went up there with a check. I don't know if you'd ever be welcome back either.
I think you might have been banned from the soup shop if you were writing the check there, but that's so funny.
If you guys are ever down in Lincoln on Thursday or Saturday, we'll go get some soup, and it'll be on me. I'll write a check. You guys can watch.
I think I'll see myself out.
Don't worry, I'll Cash App you the difference so I can pay for my meal.
Yeah, I'll get you money through Zelle.
Bruntz, as we kind of, I guess, turn our attention to football instead of checks and soup. We've got Michigan State coming up this week. I know that the coaching staff has said, like, hey, this team is closer to 6-2 than it is 2-6. I'm not buying it, if I'm being honest with you, Bruntz. I don't. Is there a couple places they could have got wins that they didn't? Sure, but I mean, let's be real here. This isn't a very good football team in Michigan State right now.
Yeah, it's coach speak, right? Like, they're not close to 6-2. They're not at all. But it's funny though. You look at their numbers, and they're not. Defensively, they're a little worse than Nebraska, but they're not that different than Nebraska numbers-wise. It's actually, I was just kind of writing a preview for our Saturday stuff, and it's pretty close in a lot of areas. I mean, they give the ball away just as much as Nebraska's offense does. They're pretty similar in turnover margin. They can play a little defense. I mean, to me, this game is so much more about Nebraska. Like, Nebraska's defense is playing really well right now. They've got 6 takeaways in the last 3 games. They're also -3 in turnover margin in those 3 games, which is it's just mind blowing to me. But if Nebraska can take care of the ball, they get a couple big plays. This should be a game that Nebraska walks out of East Lansing being bowl eligible. I think this is just another test for this team of whether or not you can stay focused. You can stay, just thinking about the players across from you and not, what's out there, because the outside noise has gotten a little bit louder around the program. You've won 3 in a row and you're feeling pretty good, but Michigan State has a few guys that can make you pay if you're not dialed in. And that's the challenge for Nebraska. I mean, it's much more this week about whether Nebraska can keep from beating itself, in my opinion.
Bruntz, I mentioned this last week, and it felt a little weird to say out loud, but I think if Nebraska can keep the turnover margin to -2, that they're going to win most of these games on the rest of the way out. That feels weird to say because you're like, hey, you got to get even most of the time. You maybe get plus turnover margin. I feel like as long as Nebraska isn't totally disastrous, they're going to be in these games. Like, am I crazy, or is that kind of where we're at?
Yeah, well, I mean, Nebraska's kind of been a little lucky, right? I mean, with the way that Northwestern game started, I mean, they should not have been sitting where they were after that first quarter. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that they were very fortunate that the defense came in and, I mean, kind of did what they've done all year. Yeah, I mean, a positive turnover margin for this group feels like a big ask.
It's a pipe dream at this point, right? Like, that's what it feels like.
Well, I'm just talking week to week. I mean, like, I feel like, even you would take that. I think they got this is a game where it's probably going to be a one possession game into the fourth quarter. And I think that, as long as Nebraska doesn't have these like just mind numbing fumbles that, even last week, I mean, a couple of them had like Harvard's fumbles when he's basically giving himself up for the play. Like, just get down. Like it's not heady stuff here. So yeah, I mean, I think they would potentially be in trouble at -2. -1, they'd be okay. If they get to 0 or close to even the rest of the way with the turnover margin, I mean, look out. You might be having to find hotels in Indianapolis in early December.
Bruntz, I'm sitting here. You mentioned the bowl game. We're talking about kind of like the shakiness to this Nebraska team, and I'm thinking, take any team over the last 6 to 7 years. It was the stint from the last bowl game up until the potential bowl game that the Huskers are on the brink of securing. This. So, where do you think this team ranks among the teams that came 6-7 years ago? I'm ultimately trying to figure out if this is the most talented of the bunch, or if this team's success is also a product of their opponents and not being, in the strongest of conferences this year.
Well, I mean, the Big Ten West has not exactly been a juggernaut during those 6 or 7 years. I mean, Nebraska was they'd won once against Northwestern and Illinois over the last 3 years combined. I think they're 1-5 against those teams. Similarly against Purdue, they just hadn't beaten them. So that the schedule's always kind of been the same. It's just always in my head kind of been about Nebraska, and the conversation for years was, oh, they're so close. This is the best, however many lost team in America, a 3-win team in America, or whatever. I don't know that this team has more talent. I think it's just being utilized in a really good way. I mean, I could probably go back to, I don't know, maybe the 2019 team. Was that probably the most talented one since
19 or 21, probably?
Yeah. Those are the two I was thinking. I mean, I think that both of those teams are a little bit more explosive on offense. I think they had decent athletes on defense that maybe I feel like probably could have been utilized a little better. So, I wouldn't say this is the most talented team. I think this team is really bought in. I think this coaching staff is coaching really, really hard right now. And, I think they've finally figured out a recipe and coaching to that recipe to win these types of one-score games. I mean, just you go back through some of the games that Nebraska's lost since they've last been in a bowl game, and it's just head-scratching the way that they've done it. I mean, so many of those games you had your defense on the field with a chance to win it. You couldn't do it. I mean, the Northwestern game where they go all the way down the field and score and win in overtime. The Purdue game where they kill you on the end around. There's just so many examples of those types of games. The way they absolutely folded on the road against Colorado. I mean, there's I think that's the difference with this team is that it's a tough group. They've got a damn good defense right now, and they're playing really good football. And I don't know that that's necessarily a talent thing.
Bruntz, this is a totally useless exercise, but it's something I find myself thinking about a lot. How many wins does either that 2019 or 2021 team have if this coaching staff is there instead?
Yeah, I thought about that too.
Way more than I should have, right? Like I've spent too much time thinking about that.
But it's just, I mean, think about even like the special teams things that some of those teams and cost them games. You know, if they had just played even in special teams in a lot of those matchups, they probably were a bowl team. I mean, that's just the reality of, you know, what they were. And I think, you know, I think the thing that hasn't changed is I feel like the margin of error has always been very thin between, you know, over the last, 4 or 5 years. It's just the defense is playing lights out right now. You're playing decent enough special teams. You're winning the field position battle, and you know you've been able to, you know, kind of ham and egg an offense, and you're getting it done. So it's still, you know, kind of precarious, but I think this coaching staff's done a really good job of getting guys to buy in and using what they've got. I mean, heck, you know, James Williams is in there for 2 games, and you know, most people wouldn't have been able to pick him out of a lineup, but before that game against Northwestern.
Bruntz, in November matters. Those were the words uttered by Coach Rule to his team. Yes, this is a learning experience, but this is what you play for. These are the games you've already prepared for, courtesy of the other 8 this season already. How real has it become to you, though, that this team is in striking distance of a bowl game and potentially something greater?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the conversation's definitely changed since we left Boulder. That's for sure. You know, it almost kind of felt like the sky was falling a little bit then. And, you know, they've found a way to, despite a lot of things going wrong on offense injury-wise, to make this work. And, you know, I think that's a credit to the players, to the coaching staff. I mean, I think if you would have, you know, walked up to somebody walking out of Folsom Field and say that, you know, by the time this team walks out of or heads to Michigan State, they're going to have a chance for a bowl game, a statistical chance of making it to Indianapolis if things break right, they would have told you you're crazy. And, you know, they've done a good job, I think, of just kind of sticking with the process. I think this coaching staff felt like it was going to be a slow build through the season, and they were going to play better football. But yeah, I mean, it's been a remarkable turnaround. And, you know, I hear a lot. It's you know, the Big Ten West schedule, it's a bad schedule. It's the same schedule they've played for since it was Legends of Leaders. So, you know, that they're beating the teams they should finally, and I think that's progress.
Bruntz, you mentioned, you know, the way the season started, and I think myself included, I'm not sure I heard anybody project this team to make a bowl game that didn't have them at least splitting those first 2 games, and to now be in a spot where they went 0-2 and now they've won 5 of their last 6 is kind of remarkable, especially as you mentioned, considering some of the injuries on offense. I wanted to touch on that offensive line real quickly here. How did you think they played with those 3 reserves against Purdue as starters on that offensive line?
I didn't notice them. And
you mean that as a good thing, right?
Yeah, that's a good thing. I mean, I think, you know, when you look at the 3 guys that were in there, I mean, you know, Teddy had played a little bit, started some, and, you know, Lutovsky's been a rotational guy. And, you know, Justin Evans-Jenkins, they love him. They've been trying to get him on the field more. So it wasn't a total stretch that those 3 guys were out there. It was like, you know, somebody that's never played before. But yeah, I didn't notice them. I thought they were able to get enough done. I thought that Purdue front was actually pretty good. You know, number 4, number 5. I mean, they were a problem all day, and will be for a lot of teams. But no, I mean, for those guys to be kind of called in on really short notice and to play the way that they did, I thought they held up fine. I mean, you know, that's kind of all you can ask for, and that's, you know, the kind of line depth that I don't know that Nebraska would have necessarily had in years past. I'm trying to think of there haven't been many teams where they probably would be able to go past like a sixth or seventh guy, and you're basically replacing the entire left side of your offensive line with a week's notice. And they did pretty well, I thought.
Bruntz, this kind of goes more toward the rest of the season because I think the opponents that Nebraska plays down the stretch may have an edge over Nebraska in terms of a Vegas line. But what do you think this team needs to do offensively more going forward in order to feel comfortable in games when they aren't treated as the favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you need, and I don't know if this offense is just what it's going to be, and they are who they are, or if there's an opportunity to change this. But I mean, you just need a little bit more of a consistent run game with the running backs. I mean, that's been what this whole season has kind of been asking for, and it's been tougher since you have the injuries to Ramir Johnson and Gabe Urban. But think about that Purdue game. I mean, you just needed to be able to turn around, hand the ball to Anthony Grant or Emmett Johnson, and trust those guys are going to hold on to the ball and just kind of push the pile. And I think that's the thing that I've been impressed with Emmett Johnson is it seems like he's a patient runner, and when he finds a crease, he goes. And I know he had the fumble against Illinois, but he seems like the kind of guy that that you can kind of turn to late in games to just kind of go into that 4-minute offense and choke the game out. I mean, that to me is what's kind of been missing and would probably result in a little bit less stress in the fourth quarter, is if you just have somebody besides Heinrich Harburg that you can go to and just kind of try to lean on people. The offense is going to be what it is. They're going to run some option. They're going to try to get it downfield for a couple deep passes. And I don't know what wrinkle is out there that we haven't seen already. So I think you just kind of have to work around the framework you have and give me a little bit more Emmett Johnson. That's what I want.
We're talking with Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7. Looking at Michigan State, obviously the quarterback situation there is a little bit up in the air. We talked to a Michigan State insider earlier in the week. He thinks it's going to be Leavitt. Does it matter who the quarterback is against Michigan State? It doesn't seem like there's been a ton of difference in what we've seen from the different guys.
Yeah, the young kid that was in there, blanking on his name.
Leavitt.
Leavitt. He at least has the ability to kind of give you some issues with his feet, I think. And that always kind of concerns me a little bit. I mean, I think Nebraska did an okay job of keeping Hudson Card in check last week with his feet, but he was able to scramble around and cause some issues. So, if you kind of have that fear of a guy being able to get out of the pocket on you, it does change how much you rush, how you rush. And I think Nebraska did a little bit of that last week, was a little bit more conservative with the way that they were doing things in the pass rush. So I don't think it makes a ton of difference, but it also kind of worries you a little bit too sometimes. And as a fan of a baseball team that doesn't play meaningful games after like May, you do kind of get a little bit concerned when you've got a young guy in there who's kind of excited to be there and trying to prove something late in the season. Like it feels like a team right now that's kind of willing to kind of play out the clock here, but the young guy wants to show what he can do. And I think that's a little concerning, even though, you're probably going to have some young guy mistakes and things like that. So it doesn't make a ton of difference, but I think a little bit more of a mobile quarterback does bring some different questions into the game plan.
Bruntz, got about 4 minutes left. I want to get a recruiting question in, at least the last one from me. Give us the latest on the Husker recruiting trail. While Nebraska's winning on the field, where do you see them winning off the field now, whether it's with a player you think is going to commit or the Huskers are at least winning the race?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're kind of still, in wait and see mode for a couple guys left in the 24 class. Grant Bricks is obviously the big one. He was at Nebraska last weekend for an unofficial visit, and that was noteworthy because he had said he wasn't going to make any more visits before he made his decision. He's going to go, I guess, now and see Kansas State again and see Oklahoma again. Those are basically the three schools for him. And he's the kind of developmental, talented offensive lineman that Nebraska would love to have to kind of wrap up its recruiting class. He's a 4-star lineman, really talented kid. So that's the big one to watch. And I think there's going to be continuing movement with the recruiting class. I mean, you've seen Nebraska pick up a couple commits over the last few months, even though they're at like 26 commits now. People always ask me, how's the math going to work on that? How are they going to bring in all these guys? It'll work out. I don't know how. I don't want to balance the checkbook on that, but I think it'll work somehow. So, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a senior film guy or two pop up still. They had Larry Carver Jr., a defensive back from Florida in last week for an official visit. So they're continuing to look around, and you got to play defense a little bit too with your guys. Certainly Carter Nelson has a lot of attention still from Notre Dame. Carlon Jones, the defensive line commit, who I think is, probably overlooked in the importance of this class, is going to visit Ohio State later in November. So got to play a little defense and keep looking for some guys that can help you too. But it's kind of focusing down a little bit on the number of guys out there.
Bruntz, you're headed up to East Lansing with BC this week. Is that right?
Yes, we bright and early tomorrow morning.
I'll say, what's the itinerary like? You got any leisurely plans before you get to the game?
Well, we'll see what kind of trouble we can get into in Detroit.
I'm sure you won't have to look far to find it.
Yeah, I know. It usually finds you.
It'll be a little bit of a circus act.
It's unfortunate the Red Wings, Pistons, everybody's not in town, which is too bad. But early kick on Saturday too kind of limits the options. So it's a business trip, guys. Don't forget that.
We're
going 1-0 this week.
What's BC like to travel with?
He's a good travel companion. He's good on long road trips. He can talk, as you would expect. He can talk about a lot of things, and he has good takes on things generally. We're a couple of old guys, so the music genres kind of line up too. We don't get into too many fights about that stuff, so it's always a good time.
Favorite late 90s, early 2000s hits? Is that what's going on there, Bruntzy?
A lot of 90s being played in that car.
Hey, you love to see it. That's my sweet spot too. Michael Bruntz, we appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks, Bruntzy.
That is Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Coming up next, we're going to play a little Hurrdat Hot Seat with my guy Andrew Rogers here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla with Andrew Rogers.
Hey there.
We are here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln for our hour number 3. It is time now for that Hurrdat hot seat.
Mm-hmm.
All the hard-hitting questions that you got to know, sports, non-sports, whatever comes to our minds. It is time for the Hurrdat hot seat.
Let's do it.
You want to start? You want me to start?
Ravi, I'll kick it off.
Let's
finish the sentence for me.
Okay.
Creighton will finish the college basketball season.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they will finish a college basketball season. I'm very confident.
There's
in that.
no period.
In the Final Four.
Why is that?
Because I think they're a little bit better than they were last year. They were in the Elite Eight last year. It's not a huge logical jump there. But
like we talked about with our guy John Fanta, they did have an easier path once March rolled around. And we saw how the bracket played out.
Yeah, March is a little bit of a crapshoot with matchups and things like that. I do think this is a Final Four quality team. Predicting March success is difficult. I do think this is a team that could win pretty easily. just off the top of my head, 27, 28 games. I think the regular season is going to be dramatically better than it was last year for a lot of the reasons that John Fanta talked about. You're assuming health in this situation, but I think they will be closer to that. I don't know. I don't remember how many exact games they play this year, but like 27-6, 28-5, somewhere in that neighborhood, as opposed to taking, double-digit regular season losses. I don't think that's on the table for them this year. And yeah, I do think this is a team. I think this is a Final Four quality team. I think they're a better fit together than they were last year. I think diversifying the playmaking options in terms of primary ball handlers is a huge benefit to them. Even if in a vacuum, Ryan Nembhard might be more talented than Stephen Ashworth, because of the specific skills that Stephen Ashworth brings to the table, I think it's a better fit for Creighton. So, I think they end up in the Final Four.
Okay, what if I changed it to they will enter March Madness as what ranking?
Top 3 seed. I think the top.
If they win 28 games, they better be a 3 seed.
A top 3 seed. So it could be a little better than that. I think this is a team that'll be in that top 12-ish range in the rankings pretty much all year. 12. If they drop below like a 15, I'd be pretty surprised at any point. So I think that translates, depending on how the Big East is and how that'll impact their strength of schedule. I think they're a top 3 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I think Creighton is definitely a Final Four team. I think this is the year that you see Creighton in the finals.
Okay, going all the way to the final.
I'm going to go all the way up. I'm not going to say they win,
sure,
but I think they're going to give this Omaha community a lot to celebrate in March.
I hope you're right. I mean, I hope if they make the Final Four that they get like a Bud Crawford like parade. Like, let's do the whole thing. It's
you look at this team up and down, and yes, we talk about it all the time. It seems like the pieces that are in place are a better fit than they were last year. I mean, they may have had a lot of talent on the roster last year.
Awkward fits, though.
It did seem a little awkward at points, and I agree with John Fanta. There were times last season where people wanted just to get their shot.
Yeah.
They wanted to get their points. And this year, when you have a guy like Stephen Ashworth to start, a guy that just facilitates, like that's in his DNA. It's to move the basketball around. I remember watching film in the off season. I remember watching different scrimmage film of him, and I remember watching his tape at Utah State. And not only can he score, yes, but his ability to work off the pick and roll and not think that he has to score when he comes off of that screen, his ability to move the ball when he doesn't have the ball. So what I mean by that is he's not dribbling the ball. Say Alexander's the point guard in this case, and they're moving the ball. You're at the top of the key. You go Shireman to the left. Shireman goes back to Trey, and he dishes it off to Ashworth, in this case on the right wing. Ashworth isn't looking to score. He's looking to feed it inside to Kalkbrenner. He's looking to go one extra pass, and find the better shot. That's just kind of who he is. And then the addition of Trout, too, I think is a better fit as well, not only defensively, but also in terms of moving the basketball on offense, not feeling like he has to get his points all the time either. This team has to work more through Ryan Kalkbrenner. I said it last year. I'll say it again. They need him to score 10-plus points a game and have 10-plus rebounds in order to be a winning team.
Yeah, I think I'd love it if he was even a little higher than that. If he was in that 15 points, 15 points, 8 to 10 rebounds a game, I'd feel really good about that. He'll probably have to rebound a little more than he did last year because you don't have a Kaluma there. But yeah, I think the pieces fit so much better. And I think you're going to see just a really cohesive team. I'm very excited about that.
If Creighton does go to the finals, it will be as a 4 seed.
Oh, you're going 4 seed. Okay. A little lower. All right. That's fair. I mean, there's not a ton of difference, I feel like, between the 3 and the 4 line most years. So you think regular season record, and we can do this next week too, but ballparking, what do you think?
I would say
wins?
25 to 27 wins.
Okay, somewhere in there. So we're in the same neighborhood.
But I think it really is all dependent. Their ranking going into March is all dependent on how they play in the Big East tournament.
Sure.
If they're a team that goes all the way to the finals, you may see them as a 2-3 seed.
Yeah.
If you see them get bounced in the first round of the Big East tournament, well, then you probably see them as a 4 or 5 seed.
Sure.
If you see them win it, Creighton could be a 1 and probably will be a 1.
Yeah, I mean, if they have the kind of season that I think they're capable of, let's say they win 28 games before the Big East tournament, and then they win the Big East tournament, you're going to have a hard time keeping them off the 1 line. All right, my first question for you.
Hit me.
We were talking earlier. We were talking earlier about the power of sports documentaries. What is your all-time favorite sports documentary?
Ooh,
I know there's a lot of them.
There is.
When I was thinking about this, I came up with 6 immediately.
And I'm waiting on 2.
Okay.
I'm waiting on the Cardinals 2011 World Series sports.
Okay.
There's got to be something made about David Freese.
Sure.
There has to be at some point.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting on the Blues Stanley Cup in 2019.
Okay.
Those are big ones. My favorite so far, though, and maybe it's a little recency bias because I've seen it in the last 2 years. The Captain.
Okay.
Derek
with Jeter. Okay.
I just love how he carried himself as a person and as an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And even though there were moments off the field where he was put into some, difficult situations as a young baseball player,
yeah,
I think he held his own really well. And I think he let his on-field play speak for who he is as a person. And I just really like DJ in that regard.
There you go. One of mine. So
yours is The Last Dance.
Well, so it's up there for sure. I love The Last Dance. I honestly think my favorite one though was one of the original 30 for 30 runs that they did with ESPN. The one about SMU, Pony Excess, about the SMU.
That's a good one.
Pay for play scandal.
Ooh, you have me thinking about another one now too, but go ahead.
I've been fascinated with that my entire life. It's one of those things. This is a weird comparison to make, but I hope it makes sense. I feel almost the same way about SMU and Chernobyl, in that it's something I heard about when I was younger, and I was always fascinated by it. And I never, it always felt wait, there's no way that really happened. Or okay, I understand it happened, but I really don't understand it. And I've always wanted to learn more about it. Obviously, so the HBO miniseries on Chernobyl provided a lot of that for me, even though I get it was fictionalized, but a lot of it was really accurate. But the SMU Pony Excess documentary on ESPN was so satisfying because there was so much that I had wanted to know about it for so long. And there just isn't a ton before that. There just wasn't a ton of information out there about it, except for just general, oh, they got the death penalty for paying players. And that was it. But to get into the nitty gritty of it was phenomenal for me. I loved that.
You have me thinking about one-off things because The Captain was a series.
Yeah.
So now you have me thinking about just one film. Bad Sport, which is the Arizona State basketball program. That was just one film about them. Now Bad Sport was a series, but that was one about them, and it was their gambling. Well, not really gambling. It was utilizing NIL before NIL.
Yeah.
But they were gambling with big sharks in Vegas, which that always I'm always intrigued by stuff like that. And then oh my gosh, it was on the tip of my tongue, and now I just forgot. I'm thinking. It was a 30 for 30.
Football, basketball.
I think it was basketball. Oh my goodness.
Was it the Boston College one?
Nope. Oh no. It was NBA. Malice at the Palace.
Oh, Malice at the Palace was really good. That's also one of those other ones where you're did this really happen? We will have more of Hurrdat Hot Seat coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back.
You got a long way to go to be as good as your dad. You better keep that in mind.
Get that sign and put it down. I don't want to see that sign again, or I'll clear this out. You got that?
Here he lies. He was a tough guy, and he kissed nobody's ass.
You got a long way to go to be as good as your dad.
We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
You got a long way to go to be as good as your dad. You better keep that in mind.
Get that sign and put it down. I don't want to see that sign again, or I'll clear this out. You got that?
Here he lies, deep beneath this veneer of glass. He was a tough guy, and he kissed nobody's ass.
Wrapping up the show here on a Thursday.
You guys ever see the movie On the Brink, Season on the Brink?
I don't think so.
I'm not sure. That's
the Dennehy movie about.
Oh no, I haven't seen that one. There's a book called Season on the Brink too. I don't know if that's what inspired the movie, but no, I have not seen Season on the Brink. We'll have to. That's not a documentary, right? That's that's a fictional.
Yeah, it's a fictional.
Based on a true story, though.
Yeah.
Might have to check that out.
Benji's a really good documentary.
Yeah, so Benji is the one you were talking about. I don't remember if we talked about it before we went off the air.
I think it was right as we got off because I started thinking about more. And then I forgot about the I Hate Christian Laettner.
That one was good. There's been a lot of good ones. That first season of 30 for 30 was stacked. Obviously, I love the 4 days in October, covering the Red Sox in 04. Some really, really good ones in there. We talked about there's in season 2, the Marinovich project was fascinating too, about Todd Marinovich and his very strange upbringing with his dad trying to.
I saw the
Fab Five one's great.
Yeah, I saw the Youngstown Boys on.
Oh yeah, that was with Maurice Claret.
Yeah, I saw that on my like For You page on Amazon or on ESPN Plus, I should say. And I was like, I could watch that, but then I ended up watching Vic, like I said earlier on in the show yesterday. So season 2 though, or volume 2 probably is more up my speed, or my speed right now because I've seen more.
Yeah,
but I haven't seen a majority of the ones from volume 1, like you said, Pony Excess. I haven't seen
that one's awesome.
Which was the other one? Like
The You was really good.
Not that
Best
one.
That Never Was.
Best That Never Was. Yeah,
that one's really good. Jordan Rides the Bus is really good. It like focuses really in depth on his time with the Birmingham Barons with Michael Jordan. And you get a little bit of that in The Last Dance, but it's like pretty in depth on it. That was a really fascinating one. There was just so many of them that, Guru of Go was really good. It was about Paul Westhead and Loyola Marymount in the 80s. They made this run. I think it was to the Elite Eight on this really high powered, like kind of run and shoot offense type deal. And that you had the passing of Hank Gatherers on the court during the course of that season. So you have both this Cinderella story and this tragedy in the same season with a guy that coached the Lakers to an NBA title. That one's phenomenal. Without Bias, the Len Bias story is really, really good as well. Just a ton of really, really good documentaries there. So I would recommend all of those. If you've got like 3 or 4 weeks to blow.
Let's continue with our Hurrdat Sports.
Yeah, what's your number 2?
Because with Bob Knight, being in the news today and yesterday, what do you think Bob Knight would have done to Connor Stallions if he found out he was stealing signs on his sideline? Like if he was in this case CMU's head coach and realized that, hey, the guy on his sidelines was Connor Stallions, like what do you think he'd do in return?
I mean, he has choked people out for less. So I think you have to start.
Does Connor Stallions live another day? Bob Knight found out.
I think you have to start there. I think
I'm not promoting or wishing death upon anybody, but Bob Knight
had a little bit of a temper
problem.
problem.
Seemed to have Bob. This is the thing about Bob Knight, right? So Bob Knight was known for his calm demeanor and saint-like temper that he probably would give him some grace.
Incredibly known for his
I'd like to refer to this whole thing from start to finish as a real Mickey Mouse operation.
That's what he would call Connor Stallions. But that's an insult to Mickey Mouse.
I think he would have thrown a chair at Connor Stallions, and hit him.
I love how loud the crowd gets when he
they
throws
were like,
the chair.
Let's go!
Oh, they were jazzed about it.
Well, because they were so upset with the call.
Yeah, they were
they were mad about it.
They
when
appreciated
their coach it's kind of like when your manager in baseball gets tossed.
Yeah.
It's like, over
a call that's total trash. Like they appreciate that the manager is as upset as they are. Yeah, no, I think he would have choked him out. I think he would have choked him out. And
would he have been hospitalized?
Depends on how fast other people got to Bob Knight. That's the $1 million question, is how many other people are around to restrain him before that it gets to that point. Let's go. My number 2 here. Speaking of Connor Stallions, if you were going to write a Connor Stallions style manifesto, what would your subject be? Like, what is something you care so weirdly about
that I'd want to take over?
That
just like would want to see them win at
that
all costs?
You could actually deep dive into that much. Because 600-page manifesto is aggressive.
Oh boy. And it can be about anything.
Anything. Doesn't have to be sports. Anything. What is the thing you care enough about to devote an unusual amount of your life to with seemingly no payoff? Because that's what we're talking about here.
Really. You're honestly
because he could have had a much more listen, he went to the Naval Academy. He could have had a much more lucrative career just being a naval officer.
Right.
Like by the time you get to an officer and you make pretty solid money, you can do really well in the Navy. And he instead chose to be a volunteer for 7 years for the University of Michigan, and then finally gets paid $50,000 a year once they finally put him on staff. This dude was doing this for nothing.
Yeah, I have a couple of different passions, right?
Okay,
That could probably like fantasy,
Yeah.
like fantasy sports.
Okay.
Is one.
Fantasy Sports Manifesto.
Collecting trading cards.
Okay.
Like sports cards, because I love nowadays finding what graded cards are worth and like what are the most popular cards.
Sure,
I like digging through
Okay.
and finding things like that. People know I love playing video games. Like
Yep.
that could be one. But if I had to really choose one that would like kind of match up, I'd probably say a manifesto on fantasy football.
The Fantasy Football Manifesto. I like it. I've actually got at my parents' house a trunk of trading cards that I collected when I was a kid. I might have to have you.
Dude, you know how long that'll take me to? Like, it'll probably take me 3 months
Yeah.
to like go through it and
yeah.
look up cards that I think I recognized
Yeah, that could
before.
be
Because the
valuable.
problem is with sports cards is there's not a book, there's not a site out there that you can like go and be like, okay, here are the cards you're looking for from 1985 and 1986 and 19 like there's
And there used to be.
right.
They used to have these magazines. It was called Beckett, right? And I used to
Beckett is like one of the premier grading or graders of cards.
but they would like estimate a value on them. And I used to buy these and I would just thumb through these hundreds of pages of cards.
So like now I take like
Bo Jackson, by the way, was on the first Beckett football.
I know the Hall of Famers,
Yeah.
right? I know a rookie card when I see one. Like I know all that stuff.
They've got
So,
the
like,
special edition cards that are
Sure, and I
rare.
know like what card like looks more special than one that's probably more generic. So I'll like set cards aside, and there is a website I type in and like see like what they sold for ungraded PSA 9s, PSA 10s. So like I can do. It's just a lot of work.
Sure, yeah.
So
it's a ton. It's a ton.
And it's funny that you bring that up too, because Ashley had a coworker that said like, hey, I collected cards. Like Andrew can just have them if you, or what people tell me all the time is, Andrew, if you look through them and like sell them, like I'll give you a share of the profit.
Sure, yeah.
But I'm like, wait a
X
second. No, I need, if this is Shark Tank, I need 90% of this business.
Because you're doing all the work.
Yeah. You get 10% of what I sell them for.
Yeah.
And so like, I just don't want to take the time and do
Yeah.
that because I hardly had enough sanity to do that with my own.
Yeah.
Because I had 500 to 1,000 or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's why I haven't done it. It's just because it's so much work. I've thought about just taking them somewhere, but then you have to trust, like, oh, this guy's not, hosing me or whatever.
But I really enjoy it. Like somebody sent me last night his Corey Seager rookie card. It was a Topps rookie card, and it was in good condition. It wasn't graded, but I told him I looked it up because I kind of like. I was like, send me the number on the back. I'll look into things, and it last sold ungraded, graded at a PSA 10 for like $45. I'm like, well, so now you got to think about it because PSA is what people want. When you send cards into PSA, you have to first be like a member. You have to pay a boatload of money to send it in to get graded.
Yeah,
and then you have to wait, like because of COVID, it's sometimes a year and like 8 months to get your card back.
Yeah, get your card graded.
So like it's a long-term investment.
Yeah.
So you have to have cards that are worth it to really send off.
For it to be, to worth doing the process. Fantasy football. I don't know. I'm thinking the sports collector manifesto. You've already started.
I'm starting getting into it. Yeah.
Feels like you've already started. Let's do one more.
All right. For you, Ravi, this one is going to be one that, it's going to be great to kind of leave the show with because maybe you'll have to answer it tomorrow.
Okay.
Would you rather be famous when you're alive and forgotten about when you die, or unknown when you're alive but famous after you die?
Oh, that's an easy one for me.
Really?
Yeah. I would. So famous, we're talking about people that don't know you know who you are, right? Like famous people that don't know you personally.
Correct.
Know who you are.
Yes.
So I don't care about what anyone thinks that I don't know after I'm dead. After I'm dead, the only thing that I care about is what the people who knew me, like how I impacted their life, how they feel about me, that type of thing, right? So it's very easily the first one because you can monetize fame now, like very easily, right? With social media and whatever. So I'll monetize the fame now. If people forget me when I'm dead, that's fine. As long as the people that care about me, I treated well.
So for me, like, I want to say I'd be the one that wants to be famous while alive because, like, you'll get a lot of money, you'll be able to spend a lot of money, like you'll get to enjoy the finer things in life. But I also think the unselfish route, and if I'm famous when I'm dead, think about what that does for like the generations behind me.
True.
And like, for example, Arnold Palmer was famous, yes, when he was alive, but
he's got a legacy.
Yeah, he's got a. those that have legacies. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about like legacy people and how that impacts grandkids and further generations.
That's true.